You can manifest anything by thinking hard enough. You've probably heard this one before, right? That whole idea that if you just think positively enough, the universe will somehow deliver your dream life to your doorstep. A new car? Think about it. $1 million? Visualize it. That relationship you've been hoping for? Just picture it in your head, and apparently it's supposed to magically appear like Amazon Prime delivery, but from the universe instead of a warehouse. Sounds amazing, sounds easy, sounds a little too good to be true, and honestly, it is. Here's the deal. The idea of manifestation usually comes packaged as the law of attraction. You've probably seen books, TikToks, and YouTube videos saying things like, your thoughts create your reality. The promise is, if you focus on what you want, you'll attract it. So if you're broke, you should think about money. If you're lonely, you should think about love. If you're sick, you should think about health. But here's the problem. Life doesn't really work like that. If it did, every single person who ever thought about winning the lottery would be rich. Every teenager with a crush would end up in a perfect relationship, and everyone daydreaming about abs would be rocking a six-pack. But we know that's not how things go. The truth is, manifestation tricks your brain into a dangerous game. It makes you believe that thinking is the same as doing. And when you start believing that, you can actually sit back and wait for miracles that never come. You feel like you're working on your dream life, but really, you're just sitting there staring at your vision board while time passes. Let's be real for a second. Have you ever made a vision board? You cut out pictures of a mansion, a yacht, maybe a happy family smiling on a beach. And it feels great. You're like, yes, this is my future. But a month later, you look up, and guess what? The mansion didn't magically drop out of the sky. You're still in the same apartment, scrolling through TikTok. That frustration, that's the misery part of this myth. Because here's what happens. When the universe doesn't deliver like the self-help book promised, you start blaming yourself. Maybe I didn't think positively enough. Maybe my vibrations were off. Maybe I doubted for 1 second, and that's why it didn't work. And that's the trap. Instead of realizing the advice was flawed, you beat yourself up. You think you failed at manifesting, when actually manifesting failed you. Now, let's not throw the whole thing out the window. There is one little useful part of manifestation. When you focus on a goal, your brain does get more tuned into opportunities related to that goal. Psychologists call this the reticular activating system. Ever notice when you buy a new car, suddenly you see that exact car everywhere? It's not that the car suddenly appeared more, your brain just started noticing it. That's what focusing does. So yeah, when you think about your goals, your brain notices chances to get closer to them. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. Noticing isn't enough. You still have to do something. The universe doesn't care if you visualized a promotion. Your boss isn't going to be like, wow, you looked very focused at your desk. Here's a raise. No, you need to actually ask, apply, or take action. Manifestation can actually backfire in another sneaky way too. Studies have shown that when people visualize themselves already succeeding, they sometimes lose motivation to put in the work. It's like your brain gets tricked into thinking the job is already done. You daydream about holding the trophy, and your brain's like, cool, we did it. Then you never actually train for the game. So here's the better way to look at it. Thinking positive is fine, but it's step 0. Step 1, 2, and 3 are always action. If you want to manifest money, you need to develop skills, look for opportunities, maybe even fail a few times before it works. If you want love, you need to actually go meet people, talk, be vulnerable. If you want health, you've got to change your habits, not just your thoughts. It's like this. You can't manifest a pizza by visualizing it. But if you visualize it and then pick up the phone and order one, now we're talking. thinking about it got you moving. That's where the magic actually is. Not in vibrations, not in cosmic ordering, but in using your thoughts as fuel for real steps. So, next time you hear someone say you can manifest anything by just thinking hard enough, take it with a big grain of salt. Your thoughts can guide you, but they don't hand you the prize. The universe isn't your delivery driver. You are. Waking up at 5 a.m. guarantees success. All right, let me guess. You've heard about the so-called 5 a.m. club, right? It's this idea floating around in the self-help world that if you just wake up at 5 a.m. every single day, your life will automatically become successful. It's sold like a magic formula. Wake up before sunrise, sip some green tea, journal about your dreams, hit the gym, read 10 pages of a book, meditate, maybe learn Mandarin, all before the rest of the world even gets out of bed. Supposedly, that's the secret sauce of billionaires. And don't get me wrong, it sounds really inspiring. The problem is, it's also kind of a scam. Here's what they don't tell you. Waking up at 5 a.m. is not some golden ticket to success. It's just waking up early. That's it. You know what happens if you wake up at 5 but you've only had 4 hours of sleep? You're not productive. You're not successful. You're a zombie in sweatpants trying to remember your own name. The truth is, humans have different chronotypes. Some people are naturally moving people. They're those chipper folks who wake up at sunrise singing like Disney characters. And then you have night owls, the people whose brains don't really kick in until 10 p.m. Forcing a night owl into the 5 a.m. club is like telling a fish to climb a tree. It's not just painful, it's biologically unfair. Let me paint a picture. Imagine you're a college student who's always been most creative late at night. You do your best work between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. You try the wake up at 5 a.m. trick because some guru swore by it. So you set your alarm. You drag yourself out of bed while it's still dark. You sit there with your coffee thinking, this is it. This is when my life changes. But instead, your brain feels like mashed potatoes. You stare at your journal, you stare at your to-do list, and nothing happens. Then by noon, you're so exhausted you crash. Does that sound like success to you? This is the problem with the myth. It makes you believe that there's only one correct way to be productive. That if you're not a morning person, you're doomed to mediocrity. And that's just not true. Here's the sneaky misery this creates. Guilt. You start beating yourself up for not being disciplined enough. You think, if I can't wake up at 5, maybe I'll never be successful. You compare yourself to those Instagram influencers who post sunrise yoga pics with captions like, grind while they sleep, and you feel like a failure. But what you don't see is that same influencer probably went to bed at 8 p.m. and has an assistant managing their schedule. Now, don't get me wrong. Waking up early can be helpful for some people. If your job starts at 9 and you want a couple extra hours for personal projects, sure, earlier mornings might give you that quiet space. But it's not about 5 a.m. specifically. It's about when you function best. Science backs this up too. Sleep researchers say what really matters is consistency and total sleep hours, not the exact time you wake up. If you sleep 7 to 9 hours and stick to a rhythm that works for your body, you'll be sharper and more focused than if you force yourself into some miracle morning routine that doesn't fit your biology. And let's be real for a second. Success isn't about when you wake up. It's about what you do when you're awake. If you're spending those extra early hours scrolling on your phone or reorganizing your desk for the 15th time, it's not moving you closer to your goals. You could wake up at 3 a.m. every day and still not get anywhere if your actions don't line up. Think of it this way. There are incredibly successful people who wake up at 4:30 a.m.
And there are also wildly successful people who wake up at 11 a.m. Winston Churchill, for example, was a late riser. He'd stay in bed until noon, working, dictating, planning. The man literally led Britain through the World War II, and he wasn't in the 5 a.m. club. So if someone tries to tell you you're a failure because you wake up at 9, just remember you're still waking up earlier than Churchill. So here's the takeaway. Instead of obsessing over the clock, focus on your energy cycles. Pay attention to when you feel most alert, creative, and motivated. For some people, that's early morning. For others, it's late at night. There's no universal rule. The real success formula is designing your day around your natural rhythm, not someone else's. So, no, waking up at 5 a.m. does not guarantee success. Waking up well-rested and then using your hours wisely, that's the real game changer.
Hustle culture equals happiness. You've seen it everywhere. The coffee mugs that say, "Rise and grind," the endless posts about team no sleep, and the motivational speeches that glorify working 16-hour days. Hustle culture basically screams at you. If you're not constantly working, you're wasting your life. The message is simple. The harder you grind, the happier and more successful you'll be. But here's the truth. Hustle culture doesn't give you happiness. Most of the time, it gives you exhaustion, burnout, and an identity crisis wrapped in a triple shot of espresso. Let me ask you this. Have you ever felt guilty for just chilling? Like you're watching Netflix on a Friday night, and suddenly you remember that one influencer who said, while you're watching TV, someone else is getting ahead of you. And then you feel like a loser because you didn't spend your evening building a 6-figure side hustle or learning 3 new languages. That's the trap of hustle culture. It makes you feel like rest is a sin. And honestly, that's miserable. Because the more you buy into it, the more you start tying your self-worth to productivity. If you worked 12 hours, you feel good about yourself. If you only worked 4 hours, you feel guilty, lazy, or behind. Basically, hustle culture teaches you to measure your value in hours worked instead of actual happiness or meaning. Here's the dark side no one talks about. Hustle culture can actually hide misery. Some people bury themselves in endless work, not because they love it, but because they're running away from something. Loneliness, insecurity, anxiety. If you're always working, you don't have to sit with those uncomfortable feelings. It feels noble because society claps for you when you say, "I'm busy." But deep down, it's just avoidance with a productivity bow on top. And let's be clear, there's nothing wrong with working hard. Discipline and effort are important. But hustle culture takes it to a toxic extreme. It pushes this idea that rest is weakness, that fun is a distraction, and that your value comes from how much you can produce for the economy, which, by the way, benefits corporations way more than it benefits you. If you burn out chasing the hustle dream, guess what? The company just replaces you. Let's throw in a relatable scenario. Imagine you're grinding 80-hour weeks. You're chasing that promotion, that dream lifestyle. You finally get there. You've got the corner office, the paycheck, the fancy title, and then you look around and realize you got no friends left because you canceled on them 100 times. Your health is wrecked because you've been running on caffeine and stress, and you don't even feel happy. You feel empty. But hey, you hustled, right? This is why hustle culture is such a dangerous myth. It sells happiness, but delivers burnout. It convinces you that if you're not constantly on the grind, you're failing. And ironically, the more you grind, the less joy you feel, because life turns into one long to-do list. Science backs this up too. Studies show that beyond a certain point, working more hours actually makes you less productive. Your brain gets tired, your creativity drops, and your mistakes go up. So those extra hours, they're not even helping. You're just spinning your wheels while your mental health quietly falls apart. Now here's the part hustle culture never admits. Happiness doesn't come from endless work. It comes from balance. You need rest, play, connection, and purpose. Think about it. When you look back on your life, are you going to say, "Wow, I'm so glad I worked 14 hours every day"? Or are you going to remember the people you loved, the moments you laughed, and the experiences that made life feel alive? Here's a healthier mindset. Work hard when it matters, but don't let hustle culture trick you into thinking work is the only thing that matters. Rest isn't laziness, fun isn't wasted time, and happiness isn't earned only through grinding. Sometimes happiness is sitting with your family, going for a walk, laughing with friends, or even doing nothing at all. So next time you see someone online preaching hustle 24/7 or die trying, remember, they might not be happy either. They might be exhausted, stressed, and secretly miserable behind that motivational post. Hustle culture promises happiness. What does it usually deliver? Burnout and regret.
Journaling fixes everything. Okay, confession time. How many of you have bought a brand new journal because you were convinced it was going to change your life? You know the drill. Fancy notebook, smooth pen, maybe even some inspirational quote on the first page like, "This is the start of your new journey." And for the first 2 days, you're on fire. You're writing down your dreams, your goals, your reflections. You're like, wow, I'm basically writing the script of my future success movie. And then life happens. Suddenly, the journal is sitting on your desk collecting dust, or worse, you keep journaling, but nothing in your actual life changes. And then comes the guilt spiral. Wait, I'm journaling. Why am I still anxious? Why am I still unmotivated? Why do I still feel stuck? Here's the myth. Journaling is often sold as a cure-all. Feeling stressed? Journal. Don't know your purpose? Journal. Want to get rich? Journal. Can't sleep? Journal. Basically, journaling is marketed like duct tape for your soul. But the truth is, journaling doesn't fix everything. Don't get me wrong. Journaling can be helpful. Writing things down can help you process emotions, clear mental clutter, and even spark creativity. But it's not a magic wand. Journaling won't automatically heal trauma, erase anxiety, or make your goals happen. And that's where the misery sneaks in. People start relying on journaling as the only tool, and then they get frustrated when it doesn't work. Let me give you an example. Say you're stressed about money. You open your journal and write, "I want financial freedom. I want to feel secure." That feels nice for a moment, but unless you actually create a budget, look for ways to earn more, or change spending habits, your situation isn't going to shift. Journaling gave you clarity, but clarity without action is just words on paper. Another problem, journaling can sometimes make you spiral more. Imagine you're overthinking a breakup. You sit down to journal, and instead of feeling lighter, you write 5 pages of sadness, regret, and what-ifs. Now you're just swimming in your emotions with no lifeboat. Journaling didn't calm you, it magnified the storm. And here's another sneaky trap. People use journaling as a procrastination tool. Ever notice how you feel super productive when you're writing out elaborate plans? Like, you'll spend 2 hours journaling about how you're going to wake up early, go to the gym, launch your business, eat clean, meditate, learn guitar, save money, travel the world. You close the notebook and think, wow, I'm crushing it. But in reality, you just wrote about doing things. You didn't actually do them. That's journaling's dirty little secret. It makes you feel like you're making progress when you're not. And look, I'm not anti-journaling. It can be a powerful tool if used the right way. If you're overwhelmed, a brain dump can give your mind breathing room. If you're grateful, jotting it down can shift your perspective. If you're working toward a goal, tracking progress in a journal can keep you focused. But, and this is the big but, journaling is a tool, not a solution. It's the start of a process, not the whole process.
Think of it like this. Journaling is like looking at a map. It shows you where you are and where you want to go. But staring at the map won't move you down the road. At some point, you've got to get up and walk. So here's the healthy way to think about journaling. Don't expect it to fix everything. Use it as a mirror, not as medicine. Journaling helps you see what's going on inside, but once you see it, you still need to take action outside. If you're anxious, journaling might help you name the fear, but then maybe you need therapy or stress management or changes in your lifestyle. If you're chasing a goal, journaling can remind you of the goal, but then you've got to take small steps daily to get there. If you're heartbroken, journaling can help release the pain, but healing also needs time, support, maybe even talking it out with others. So no, journaling doesn't fix everything. It can help, but it's not a magic cure. Don't fall for the Instagram posts that say, journal your way to your dream life. The real dream life comes from what you do after you close the notebook.
Cutting out all negative people makes you thrive? You've probably heard this one 1,000 times. If you want to succeed, cut out all the negative people in your life. Sounds simple, right? Just grab some metaphorical scissors, snip away every friend, family member, or coworker who isn't radiating sunshine, and suddenly you'll blossom into the best version of yourself. It's catchy advice. It feels empowering. But here's the problem. It's also way too black and white. And honestly, it can make your life lonelier, not better. Let's break this down. The idea here is that negative people drag you down. If your friend is always complaining, if your sibling doubts your goals, if your coworker is critical, the self-help gurus say, cut them off, no excuses. And on the surface, that sounds great. Who doesn't want to protect their peace? But here's the tricky part. Not everyone who's negative is toxic. Sometimes negativity is actually honesty. Think about it. Say you've got a friend who tells you, hey, I'm not sure quitting your job without a backup plan is the best move. Is that negativity? Or is that caution? If you cut out every person who ever questions you, you might be cutting out people who care about you the most. Constructive criticism is not the same as toxic energy, but hustle culture often teaches us to lump both of them together. Here's where this myth turns miserable. It convinces people that any discomfort is bad. If someone challenges you, makes you reflect, or points out flaws in your plan, you label them negative and cut them off. But guess what? Growth often comes from discomfort. If you only surround yourself with cheerleaders who clap no matter what, you might feel good in the short term, but you also risk making bad choices with no one brave enough to call you out. And let's be real, sometimes the negative people are family. It's not always practical or healthy to just cut off your mom, your dad, your sibling, or your spouse because they're worried about you. Sure, some relationships are toxic and genuinely harmful. Those, yes, set boundaries or step away. But not every disagreement is toxicity. Sometimes people express fear, doubt, or criticism out of love, not malice. Here's a relatable scenario. Imagine you're starting a small business. You're excited, fired up, and ready to go. You tell your cousin, and they respond, "Be careful, most small businesses fail in the first year." Instantly, you think, wow,
What a negative person. They don't believe in me. But if you stop for a second, you'll realize they're not necessarily trying to drag you down. They're pointing out a real statistic. That kind of input might actually push you to prepare better, save more, or plan smarter. Cutting them off just because they didn't clap, that's not growth, that's immaturity. The other hidden misery here is isolation. If you keep cutting people off for being negative, eventually you'll run out of people, and loneliness is a terrible recipe for thriving. Humans need connection, even with people who sometimes annoy us. Constantly purging your circle leaves you with no circle. Now, let's be fair. There are truly toxic people. You know the type. The ones who constantly belittle you, drain your energy, or sabotage your progress. Cutting those people off, absolutely healthy, no question. But lumping every doubter, every critic, every cautious friend into the same toxic energy bucket is where self-help advice gets messy. The healthier mindset is this. Instead of cutting out everyone labeled negative, learn how to filter. Ask yourself, is this person toxic, or are they just worried for me? Are they belittling me, or are they offering tough love? Do they want to see me fail, or do they want me to be safe? Not all negativity is poison. Sometimes it's medicine. It tastes bitter, but it helps. And here's the thing. Learning how to handle negativity is part of emotional strength. Life is full of negative people, bosses, coworkers, strangers online. You can't cut them all out, but you can build resilience so their words don't control you. Sometimes the real growth isn't avoiding negativity, it's learning not to be ruled by it. So no, cutting out all negative people won't automatically make you thrive. It might even leave you isolated and blind to important feedback. Thriving comes from choosing wisely who stays close, setting boundaries with people who drain you, and being mature enough to handle honest criticism without labeling it as toxic energy.
Every successful person reads a book a week. You've definitely seen this one floating around, right? There's always some post on LinkedIn or Instagram claiming the average CEO reads 52 books a year. The message is simple. If you want to be successful, you'd better start plowing through books like a lawnmower in a library. A book a week, no excuses. At first, it sounds inspiring. You think, wow, so if I just read enough books, I'll unlock the secret codes of success. Next thing you know, you're loading up your cart with self-help bestsellers, biographies of billionaires, and productivity guides that all have the same stock photo of a sunrise on the cover. You make a huge reading list, and maybe even brag a little online. This year, I'm doing 52 books. But here's the truth. Reading a book a week doesn't guarantee success. In fact, if you're just reading to check off a number, you might actually be wasting your time. Let's break this down. The myth comes from a half-truth. Yes, many successful people read a lot. Warren Buffett reads for hours a day. Bill Gates publishes book lists. But here's what those viral posts leave out. These people don't just read for quantity. They read for quality and application. They don't care about hitting 52 books a year. They care about absorbing ideas and then actually using them. That's the key difference. Because here's the trap. People get obsessed with the number. They treat books like notches on a belt. You speed through them, skim the pages, highlight some quotes for Instagram, and then move on to the next one. But ask yourself, how much do you actually remember? Can you explain the book to a friend? Can you apply any of it in your life? Or did you just rush through 300 pages to feel productive? This is what's called productivity theater. You feel accomplished because you're consuming books quickly, but consumption without application is just mental fast food. You're full, but you're not nourished. Here's a relatable scenario. Imagine you read 5 books on fitness in 1 month. Each one tells you something slightly different. Lift heavy, do cardio, eat keto, try intermittent fasting. You finish all of them, feel super smart, and then you don't actually work out. Or maybe you try a little of everything and get confused. Now you're overwhelmed instead of fit. That's the dark side of binge reading. Knowledge overload with no action. And here's another kicker. Not every successful person even reads that much. Some don't like books at all. They learn from mentors, conversations, podcasts, real-world experiments. Think about entrepreneurs who dropped out of school and built companies by trial and error. They weren't reading 52 books a year. They were out there failing, adjusting, and trying again. Reading is just one path, not the only path. Also, let's be real, not everyone has the time to read a book a week. You might be working a job, raising kids, dealing with life. Forcing yourself into a book-a-week challenge can actually make reading stressful. Instead of enjoying it, you're speed reading like it's a homework assignment. That pressure sucks the joy out of learning. So here's the healthier mindset. Don't focus on how many books you read. Focus on how much you absorb and apply. If you read 1 book this year that completely changes how you think, inspires action, and improves your life, that's way more valuable than blasting through 52 books you barely remember. Think of it like food. Would you rather eat 52 cheap meals you scarf down without tasting, or one amazing meal that truly nourishes you and sticks with you? Books are the same way. And one more thing, there's also wisdom outside of books. Conversations with interesting people, watching documentaries, traveling, failing at projects. These can all teach you just as much, if not more, than reading. Don't let the book-a-week myth make you feel like you're falling behind just because you're not a speed reader. So no, not every successful person reads a book a week. Some do, some don't. And even for the ones who do, it's not the number that matters. It's what they do with the knowledge. The real takeaway? Read at your own pace. Read what excites you, what challenges you, what sparks ideas. And then, most importantly, put something into practice. Because 1,000 books won't change your life. 1 book plus action can.
Visualization is enough to reach your goals. So let me guess. At some point, someone told you, if you just close your eyes and imagine the life you want, it will eventually become reality. Maybe you've seen the vision boards, the YouTube gurus saying, picture yourself already living your dream. The universe will handle the rest. Sounds cool, right? All you've got to do is sit in a comfy chair, dream day about your dream car, dream house, or dream body, and poof, it'll magically show up like Amazon Prime. But here's the reality check. Visualization alone doesn't make things happen. If it did, we'd all be millionaires with 6-packs by now. Don't get me wrong, visualization does have some benefits. Athletes use it all the time. For example, pro basketball players will picture themselves sinking free throws. Runners will imagine the finish line.
This kind of mental rehearsal can help with focus and confidence. Your brain gets a little preview of what success feels like, and that can motivate you. So, in that sense, visualization works. But here's where the self-help myth goes off the rails. People stop at visualization. They convince themselves that imagining their goals is enough. Like, if you just feel it in your heart and believe with your soul, the universe will rearrange itself for you. But here's the thing. The universe doesn't deliver Amazon packages of success. The only delivery system it recognizes is your actions. Think about it. If you sit on your couch every day visualizing your dream body, but you never touch a dumbbell or change your eating habits, guess what? You're not getting abs. You're getting back pain from all that sitting. If you visualize owning a business but never learn about finances, marketing, or customers, you're not becoming an entrepreneur. You're just really good at daydreaming. Here's the trap. Visualization can trick your brain into feeling like you've already accomplished something. You imagine yourself on stage giving speech or crossing the finish line, and your brain gives you a little dopamine hit. You feel proud, but you didn't actually do anything. That false sense of progress is dangerous, because if you feel like you've already won in your head, you might lose motivation to do the hard work in real life. It's kind of like watching workout videos on YouTube and convincing yourself you're healthier just because you learned the routine, but you never actually did the push-ups. Or like scrolling through recipes, saving them on Pinterest, and telling yourself, I'm basically a chef now. Nope, you're just collecting ideas. No actual cooking happened. Here's a simple way to think about it. Visualization is a spark, not the fire. It can light the match, but if you don't add wood and oxygen, aka consistent effort, that spark dies out. Let me give you an example. Imagine two people want to run a marathon. One spends an hour a day visualizing crossing the finish line, feeling the metal around their neck. The other spends an hour a day actually training, running, stretching, improving their endurance. Who's going to finish the marathon? Yeah, the one who's actually training. The visualizer might feel inspired, but inspiration without preparation equals disappointment. Now, don't throw out visualization completely. Like I said, it's useful, but use it strategically. Instead of just imagining the outcome, like holding the trophy, visualize the process. Picture yourself getting up early to practice. Picture yourself saying no to distractions. Picture yourself sending the emails, making the calls, showing up when it's boring and unglamorous. That's the kind of visualization that helps, because it mentally prepares you for the grind, not just the glory. And let's talk about the bigger picture here. A lot of self-help myths thrive on making things sound easy. Just think positive. Just visualize it. Just manifest it. Easy sells. But real growth, real change, it's messy. It's uncomfortable. It takes repetition and failure. Visualization doesn't erase that reality. At best, it helps you stay focused when things get tough. At worst, it keeps you stuck in fantasy land. So here's the takeaway. Don't confuse visualization with action. They're not the same. If you want results, use visualization to fuel your motivation, but then get up and do the work. Instead of just imagining yourself in your dream life, ask, what's one small step I can take today to move closer to it? Then actually do that thing. Remember this. Dreamers live in their heads. Doers live in reality. The sweet spot is being both. Dream it, picture it,
Then go build it.
Affirmations rewire your brain instantly. Okay, let's be honest. Affirmations sound amazing. You've probably heard someone say, just repeat these magic phrases every morning and your brain will reprogram itself. Things like, I am rich, I am confident, I attract success, I am unstoppable. And in theory, it sounds simple. Just talk yourself into being the best version of you, like a cheat code for life. But here's the big myth. Affirmations alone don't instantly rewire your brain. Saying something in the mirror 10 times doesn't erase years of habits, beliefs, and patterns. Think about it this way. If you walk up to a wall and say, this isn't a wall, this is a door, this is a door, this is a door, does the wall magically transform into a door? Nope, it's still a wall. The only way you get through is by finding an actual door, building one, or grabbing a sledgehammer. That's how affirmations work. Words don't change reality. Actions do. Now, don't get me wrong. Affirmations aren't useless. They can help shape your mindset if they're used in the right way. The problem is, a lot of self-help advice makes it sound like all you need to do is repeat phrases and the universe will bend to your will. That's just not how your brain works. Let's get into the science for a second, but in simple terms. Your brain has what's called the reticular activating system, RAS. It's like a filter that decides what's worth paying attention to. If you buy a red car, suddenly you notice red cars everywhere. That's your RAS kicking in. Affirmations can work in a similar way. If you keep telling yourself, I am capable, your brain may start noticing opportunities where you can prove yourself. So yes, words can prime your brain. But here's the catch. If your daily behavior completely contradicts your affirmations, your brain will just call BS. Imagine standing in front of a mirror saying, I am a healthy, disciplined person, but every night you binge junk food, skip exercise, and ignore your sleep. Your brain goes, no you don't. Stop lying. And instead of building confidence, affirmations can make you feel worse, because deep down, you know they're not true. That's why repetition without aligned action doesn't create change. You can chant, I am financially free all day long, but if you're still swiping your credit card recklessly and ignoring your budget, your brain won't buy it. You're just layering positive words over negative habits, like painting over a moldy wall. Looks nice for a while, but the rot is still underneath. So how do affirmations actually become powerful? Here's the trick. They have to be tied to behavior. Instead of saying, I am rich, try something like, I am learning to manage my money better every day. That's not just a feel-good statement. It points you toward an action. Instead of, I am confident, say, I am becoming more confident by speaking up once a day. See the difference? One is a fantasy. The other is a direction. Here's another example. Imagine you're learning to play the guitar. If you stand in front of a mirror saying, I am a world-class guitarist, but you never practice, you're just a person with callous-free fingers and a very confused brain. But if you say, I am improving as a guitarist because I practice daily, and then actually pick up the guitar, boom. That affirmation sticks because your actions reinforce the words. Affirmations are like seeds. If you just scatter them on concrete, nothing happens. But if you plant them in soil, your habits, and water them, your actions, they actually grow into something real. The problem is, a lot of people get addicted to affirmations the same way they get addicted to motivational quotes. It feels good in the moment. You get that quick rush of positivity, but then you go back to the same patterns because nothing in your behavior changed. It's like eating sugar when you're hungry. Quick high, quick crash. No nourishment. So here's the bottom line. Affirmations can help, but they're not magic spells.
They don't instantly rewire your brain. They're more like reminders to live in alignment with your goals. If you want them to work, you have to back them up with real action. Otherwise, they're just noise. Next time you stand in front of the mirror, don't just declare who you want to be. Declare what you're willing to do to get there. That's when affirmations stop being empty words and start becoming a compass for your life.
The law of attraction is a scientific law. All right, let's talk about something that blew up in self-help culture, the law of attraction. Chances are you heard the promise before. Think positive thoughts and the universe will deliver. You want money? Visualize money. You want love? Imagine your perfect partner. You want a Ferrari? Close your eyes, feel the leather seats, and somehow the Ferrari shows up in your driveway. Sounds magical, right? Almost like having a cosmic vending machine that dispenses anything you want, as long as you send out the right vibrations. And that's exactly how it gets marketed. But here's the catch. The law of attraction is not, and has never been, a scientific law. The word law makes it sound like gravity, like it's something the universe has to obey. Drop an apple, gravity pulls it down, no exceptions. Flip a switch, electricity flows, no exceptions. These are tested, measurable, repeatable scientific principles. But the law of attraction, that's not physics, that's a belief system. Now here's where people get mixed up. Self-help gurus love to sprinkle in scientific-sounding words like energy, frequency, and vibration to make the whole thing feel legit. They'll say your thoughts are energy, and energy attracts like energy. And hey, technically, your brain does produce electrical impulses, but that doesn't mean imagining a winning lottery ticket is going to bend quantum mechanics in your favor. Physics doesn't work that way. So, if it's not science, why do so many people swear by it? Why do people say, I visualize my dream house and now I live in it? Well, here's where it gets interesting. It's not because the universe magically rearranged itself. It's because focusing your thoughts on something makes you more likely to notice opportunities and take actions toward it. This is psychology, not physics. Remember the RAS we talked about before? That mental filter in your brain that decides what's worth noticing? If you're fixated on buying a certain car, suddenly you see it everywhere. If you're focused on getting healthier, you start noticing gyms, recipes, or fitness videos that you'd normally scroll past. That's your brain tuning in, not the cosmos beaming signals back at you. So when people say the law of attraction worked for them, what really happened is they focused their attention on something they wanted. That focus changed their mindset and decisions. Those decisions created opportunities. Those opportunities, when acted on, led to results. It's not magic, it's psychology and behavior. But here's the dangerous part. When you dress this as a law of the universe, it sets people up for misery. Because if you believe the universe is supposed to deliver anything you think about, then failure feels like your fault. Didn't get that dream job? Must be because you didn't vibrate high enough. Still single? Guess your negative thoughts are blocking love. Struggling financially? Oh, clearly your mindset is broken. See the problem? Instead of looking at real-world factors like skills, effort, timing, privilege, or even plain bad luck, people start blaming themselves for not manifesting hard enough. It becomes spiritual gaslighting. Now, don't get me wrong. Visualization has value. Athletes do it all the time. A basketball player might imagine sinking the perfect free throw before the shot. A runner might picture themselves crossing the finish line. That kind of mental rehearsal can sharpen focus and calm nerves. But notice something. Those athletes also practice relentlessly.
They don't just sit on the couch visualizing gold medals and expect the Olympics to call. So here's the real deal. The law of attraction is best understood as a mindset tool, not a scientific law. It can help you clarify what you want, boost your motivation, and tune your brain to notice opportunities. But the universe isn't Amazon Prime. You don't get to place an order with your thoughts and wait for 2-day delivery. Think of it like this. Let's say you want to write a book. If you sit around visualizing a bestseller but never put words on a page, nothing's going to happen. But if you use visualization to keep yourself motivated and then you actually write every day, edit, publish, and market it, now your dream has a fighting chance. Not because the universe sent you a book deal, but because you did the work. So yeah, the law of attraction can inspire you. It can give you hope. It can make you dream bigger than you thought possible. But let's not confuse belief with science. Gravity will pull you down every time. The law of attraction, that one only works if you stand up, take action, and make your thoughts real.
Meditation always makes you calm. All right, let's be honest. When you hear the word meditation, what image pops into your head? Probably someone sitting cross-legged, eyes closed, totally peaceful, maybe even glowing with Zen-like calm. The stereotype is that meditation is this magical pill for stress, the ultimate cure for anxiety, the one-stop shop for inner peace. But here's the reality check. Meditation doesn't work that way for everyone. In fact, for some people, meditation doesn't calm them at all. It actually makes them feel worse, more anxious, more restless, even downright panicky. And yeah, that surprises a lot of people because the wellness industry has been selling meditation as this universal solution. So why does this happen? Well, think about what meditation really asks you to do. You sit quietly, close your eyes, and turn your focus inward. No distractions, just you and your thoughts. Sounds simple, but here's the catch. Not everyone wants to be left alone with their thoughts, especially if those thoughts include unresolved trauma, buried emotions, or racing worries. For someone carrying heavy memories, maybe from abuse, loss, or past mistakes, meditation can feel like opening a closet door and having everything come crashing down. Instead of calm, what floods in is stuff they've been trying hard to keep pushed away. That's not relaxation, that's emotional overload. And even if you don't have trauma, meditation can trigger discomfort. Some people report feeling dizzy, trapped, or like they can't breathe when they sit still in silence. For others, their brain just gets louder. All those what-ifs, deadlines, regrets, and insecurities start playing on loop. Instead of finding peace, they end up spiraling deeper into stress. Now, don't get me wrong, meditation does have proven benefits for many people. Studies show it can lower blood pressure, reduce stress hormones, and improve focus. But here's the key. Those benefits aren't guaranteed and they aren't universal. Just like exercise, diet, or therapy, what works wonders for one person might not be right for another. The problem is when self-help culture pushes meditation as if it's this perfect, risk-free tool that always makes you calm.
That's simply not true. For some, it's neutral. For others, it's uncomfortable. And for a smaller group, it can actually trigger distress. So what can you do if meditation backfires on you? First, don't beat yourself up. You're not bad at meditating. You're not broken. It just means that this particular technique doesn't suit your nervous system or your current situation, and that's totally okay. There are other ways to find calm. For some people, movement-based practices like yoga, tai chi, or even going for a walk work better. Others find grounding through journaling, art, or music, or mindful breathing without the long silence. Some people need guided meditation with a voice leading them instead of sitting alone with nothing but their thoughts. And sometimes professional support from a therapist is the safer path before diving into deep mindfulness. Here's the bottom line. Meditation isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. It can be powerful, yes, but it can also stir up things you're not ready to face. The mistake is thinking it's always supposed to calm you. Because the truth is, sometimes meditation shines a spotlight on exactly the stuff you've been avoiding, and that's not calming at all. So if you've ever tried meditation and thought, wow, this actually makes me feel worse, you're not alone, and you're not doing it wrong. The self-help myth here is the promise that meditation always equals calm. The reality, it's just one tool in a huge toolbox of ways to manage your mind and emotions. Use it if it helps, skip it if it doesn't, and never feel pressured to force yourself into stillness if stillness makes you unravel.
Passion guarantees success. Okay, let's clear something up right away. Passion is awesome. It's exciting. It feels like fuel in your chest. It gives you that spark to keep going even when you're tired. But here's the dangerous myth, the idea that passion all by itself is enough to guarantee success. You've probably heard people say, just follow your passion and the money will follow. Or, if you love what you do, success is inevitable. Sounds inspiring, right? Problem is, it's just not true. Passion is only one piece of the puzzle. Without the other pieces like skill, strategy, and real-world demand, passion can actually lead you straight into a dead end. Let's make this real with an example. Imagine you love baking cupcakes. You're obsessed with it. You spend weekends experimenting with flavors, you dream about frosting designs, and you tell everyone you're going to quit your job and open a cupcake shop. That's passion, and it's great, until you realize that 10 other cupcake shops already exist in your town, and each one struggling to stay afloat because people just don't buy cupcakes every day. Suddenly, your passion collides with reality. See, success usually comes from the overlap of three things: what you love doing, what you're good at or willing to get good at, and what other people actually want or need. If you're missing one of those things, passion alone won't carry you. You can be the most enthusiastic cupcake baker in the world, but if no one's buying, you're just left with a sugar high and an empty wallet. This is where the self-help myth messes people up. They hear, follow your passion, and assume passion is some magical GPS that always leads to success. But in reality, passion is more like the fuel in your car. You still need a map, you still need to know where the road leads, and you need to make sure your car is actually working. Otherwise, you're just burning gas and going nowhere. Now, does this mean passion doesn't matter? Not at all. Passion is what keeps you going through the boring parts, the practice, the mistakes, the long nights, the rejections. Without passion, it's way harder to stick with something long enough to get good at it. But passion isn't a guarantee. It's motivation, it's energy, and it has to be paired with effort, skill building, and, let's be real, a bit of market demand. Think about it this way. Thousands of people are passionate about playing video games. Does that mean they'll all become professional streamers or esports stars? Nope. The ones who make it are the ones who mixed passion with discipline, practice, networking, timing, and luck. For everyone else, gaming stays a fun hobby, and there's nothing wrong with that. Another trap with the passion equals success myth is that makes people feel like failures if their passion doesn't pay off. Imagine someone who loves painting, but they can't seem to sell their art. Instead of realizing that maybe the market is small or they need different skills, they think, maybe I'm just not passionate enough. That's crushing, and it's unfair. Here's the healthier way to look at it. Passion is the starting point, not the finish line. It's the thing that gets you moving. But then you've got to sharpen your skills, understand the reality of demand, and be flexible enough to adjust along the way. Sometimes passion leads to a career. Other times, it stays a beloved hobby while you find other ways to pay the bills. Both paths are valid. And honestly, sometimes forcing your passion into a career can kill the joy. Ever heard of that? Like, you loved photography, but once you had to shoot weddings every weekend just to survive, it started to feel like a grind. Suddenly, the thing that gave you joy now feels like work. That's another reason why blindly chasing passion as a guaranteed success formula can backfire. So, here's the takeaway. Passion is powerful, but it's not enough by itself. It needs to be paired with skill and connected to something people actually want or need. Otherwise, it's just energy without direction. Success comes when passion fuels the work, but the work itself still has to line up with reality. So don't get tricked by the myth. Passion doesn't guarantee success, but it can make the journey way more enjoyable, even when success doesn't look the way you first imagined it.
You should always be positive. All right, let's talk about one of the most exhausting self-help myths out there, the idea that you should always be positive. You've probably heard it before. Don't be negative. Just look on the bright side. Good vibes only. It sounds nice, right? Who doesn't want to feel good all the time? But here's the truth. Forcing yourself to be endlessly positive doesn't make you healthier, happier, or stronger. In fact, it often makes things worse. Let's get real. Life isn't always positive. Bad things happen. People lose jobs. Relationships end. Health problems show up. Bills pile up. And sometimes you just have days where everything feels heavy. That's not negativity. That's reality. When someone tells you to just stay positive in those moments, it can feel dismissive, like they're saying your feelings don't matter, or worse, that you're doing something wrong by simply feeling sad, angry, or anxious. Here's the problem. When we constantly shove negative emotions under the rug in the name of positivity, they don't disappear. They get buried. And buried emotions don't stay hidden forever. They leak out in other ways, maybe as stress, irritability, physical tension, or even health issues. You might find yourself snapping at people for small things, feeling drained for no reason, or lying awake at night with your mind racing. That's not positivity. That's repression. Think about it like this.
Emotions are signals. They're like your body's notification system. Anger can signal that your boundaries are being crossed. Sadness might be telling you that you need to slow down, rest, or grieve something. Anxiety might be a nudge that you're feeling unsafe or unprepared. If you ignore those signals in the name of staying positive, it's like covering up your car's warning lights with duct tape. The lights don't go away, you just can't see them, and eventually the engine breaks down. Now, I'm not saying positivity is bad. Optimism has its place. It can give you hope, resilience, and motivation when you need it. But there's a difference between real optimism and toxic positivity. Real optimism says, "This is hard, but I believe I can get through it." Toxic positivity says, "This isn't hard at all, and if you think it is, you're being weak." See the difference? One acknowledges reality and encourages you. The other denies reality and shames you. And here's the irony. Allowing yourself to feel negative emotions actually makes you more resilient, not less. When you give yourself permission to be sad, angry, or frustrated, you process those emotions. You move through them instead of getting stuck in them. It's like letting a storm pass instead of trying to pretend the sky is sunny while thunder's shaking the house. There's even research on this. Psychologists have found that people who accept their negative emotions instead of trying to avoid or suppress them tend to experience less long-term stress and depression. Why? Because they're not wasting energy fighting their own feelings. They feel what they feel, learn from it, and move on. Here's a personal example you might relate to. Imagine you had a terrible day. Your boss yelled at you, traffic was awful, and when you got home, you spilled your dinner all over the floor. You're fuming. If you tell yourself, "I have to be positive," you're just stuffing down the frustration. You might plaster on a smile, but inside, that irritation is simmering. Now, imagine instead you say, "Wow, today sucked. I'm angry, I'm tired, and I need a break." That honesty gives you the freedom to release it. Maybe you go for a run, maybe you vent to a friend, maybe you just sit in silence for a bit. By acknowledging it, you process it, and by tomorrow, you're actually lighter. That's the key, balance. Life is not about being positive all the time. It's about being authentic. It's about knowing that joy and sadness, hope and frustration, confidence and doubt, they all belong. They're all part of the human experience. Pretending that negative emotions don't exist doesn't make you stronger. It just disconnects you from yourself. So here's the real takeaway. Positivity has its place, but it's not the whole picture. Growth comes from embracing the full range of your emotions, not just the pretty ones. Don't let anyone shame you for feeling negative. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit that, yeah, I'm not okay right now. That honesty is what actually leads to healing and growth, because at the end of the day, life isn't about being always positive. It's about being real, and real is where true resilience lives.
Grind now, rest later. All right, let's talk about the hustle culture myth that has worn so many people down. Grind now, rest later. You've seen it plastered all over motivational posters, Instagram reels, and self-help books. The idea's simple. Sacrifice everything today, work yourself to the bone, and later, someday in the future, you'll get to enjoy the rewards. Sounds noble, right?
But here's the catch. This mindset convinces you that rest is a reward, not a requirement. And that's a recipe for burnout. Think about it. If you run your body and mind like they're machines that never need to stop, what happens? Machines overheat, parts wear down, systems crash. And unlike a laptop that you can just reboot, your body doesn't work like that. Sleep debt, stress, and constant overwork don't just disappear because you finally decide to take a vacation 2 years later. They pile up, layer after layer, until one day your body forces you to rest through exhaustion, sickness, or even total burnout. Here's where this myth tricks people. It sells the fantasy that success is a straight-line sprint, that if you just keep pushing, you'll eventually cross a magical finish line where everything gets easier. But life doesn't really work that way. Success is more like a marathon, not a sprint. And in a marathon, rest isn't optional. You need water breaks. You need pacing. If you try to run at sprinting speed the entire way, you won't make it to the finish line. Let's get practical. Science backs this up big time. Sleep, for example, isn't wasted time. It's when your brain literally rewires itself. While you sleep, your brain consolidates memories, solves problems, and clears out toxins that build up during the day. If you cut sleep short because you're grinding, you're not actually gaining extra productive hours. You're borrowing from tomorrow's focus, creativity, and decision-making power. Studies have even shown that going without sleep for 24 hours impairs your brain the same way as being legally drunk. Imagine bragging, "Yeah, I'm grinding hard. I'm basically tipsy at my desk every day." Doesn't sound so smart when you frame it that way, does it? And rest isn't just sleep. It's downtime. It's taking a walk, hanging out with friends, or even just staring out the window. These so-called unproductive moments are actually when your brain connects dots in the background. You know those times when you've been stuck on a problem for hours and then the solution just pops into your head while you're showering? That's your brain working because you stepped away, not in spite of it. Now here's something we don't talk about enough. Hustle culture thrives on guilt. It makes you feel like if you're not grinding 24/7, you're falling behind. But that guilt is toxic. It tricks you into ignoring your own needs, like eating properly, resting, or spending time with people you love. And the cruel irony, the people who grind nonstop often end up burning out so badly that they end up losing months, even years of progress. Meanwhile, the people who paced themselves, who rested along the way, kept moving steadily forward. Think of it like chopping wood. If you swing an axe nonstop, eventually the blade gets dull, and you're putting in way more effort for way less result. But if you pause to sharpen the blade, suddenly each swing is easier and more effective. Rest is sharpening your blade. Without it, all you're doing is exhausting yourself while making less progress. And here's the most human part. Rest is not something you earn at the end of the grind. Rest is part of the grind. It's what makes the grind sustainable. Telling yourself, "I'll rest later," is like saying, "I'll breathe later." You might hold out for a little while, but eventually nature wins. So if you've been caught in this grind now, rest later mindset, here's your permission slip to flip the script. Rest is not laziness. Rest is not weakness. Rest is literally fuel. The best athletes, the most successful entrepreneurs, The most creative artists, they all know this. They don't just push hard, they recover hard. They treat rest as strategy, not as an afterthought. Here's the real truth. If you want long-term success, you don't need to choose between grinding and resting. You need both. The grind gives you momentum, but rest gives you staying power. And staying power is what actually gets you where you want to go. So the next time someone tells you to grind now, rest later, remember this. Later doesn't exist if you burn yourself out today. Rest is not the opposite of work. Rest is part of the work. And if you truly want to win in the long run, you have to honor that balance.
The universe tests you before rewarding you. Have you ever heard someone say, "Don't worry, the universe is just testing you. Your breakthrough is right around the corner"? On the surface, it sounds comforting, like there's some cosmic teacher giving you pop quizzes to make sure you're ready for the big rewards in life. But let's be real. This idea can actually keep people stuck in cycles of misery they don't need to stay in. Here's the problem with it. It makes suffering feel meaningful, even when it's not. Imagine you're working a terrible job where your boss disrespects you, the pay is awful, and you're constantly stressed. Instead of saying, "This situation is unhealthy, I need to make a change," you might convince yourself, "No, this is just the universe testing me. If I hang in there, I'll be rewarded." So instead of leaving that toxic environment, you stay trapped in it, waiting for some cosmic pat on the back that may never come. And you know what this reminds me of? Those old school myths where heroes had to slay monsters or endure endless suffering before they could reach treasure or enlightenment. Somewhere along the line, self-help culture took that story arc and turned it into a rule. You must suffer before you succeed. But life isn't a movie. Sometimes things go wrong for no reason. Sometimes suffering doesn't lead to a reward. It just wears you down. Now, don't get me wrong. Struggle can teach you things. Setbacks can build resilience. But that doesn't mean every bad experience is some divine exam you need to endure. Sometimes a bad relationship is just a bad relationship. Sometimes a failed business idea is just a mismatch between product and market. And pretending that every bit of pain is some test can stop you from taking action. Instead of leaving, pivoting, or asking for help, you sit and wait, hoping the universe will hand you a gold medal for endurance. The truth is, the universe isn't keeping score. It doesn't care if you suffer for 3 years or 3 months before you succeed. What matters is the choices you make in response to challenges. Do you learn? Do you adapt? Do you take care of yourself while you push forward? That's what actually changes outcomes, not how much pain you can tolerate before some imaginary finish line. Here's the sneaky way this myth works. It romanticizes suffering. It makes you feel noble for being miserable, like your pain is proof that you're worthy. But think about it. Do you really need to suffer to be worthy of good things? Do you need to be broke, heartbroken, or exhausted just to prove to some invisible cosmic judge that you deserve happiness? That mindset can get really toxic really fast. And let's be honest, sometimes people use this myth as a coping mechanism because it feels better than admitting things are just unfair or random. It's tough to say, "This happened to me and it sucks," and there's no hidden meaning behind it. So instead, we tell ourselves, it's a test, it's happening for a reason. And while that might feel comforting in the moment, it can blind us to the fact that we actually have the power to change our situation. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone in a relationship where their partner constantly cheats, lies, or disrespects them. If they believe in this universe testing idea, they might stick around thinking, if I pass this test by staying loyal, the universe will reward me with a better relationship. But in reality, the healthiest move is to walk away, learn from the experience, and build something better elsewhere. The reward doesn't come from waiting for the universe to fix things. It comes from you deciding you deserve better. Here's the bigger picture. Life will throw challenges at you, no doubt. But you don't need to attach some mystical narrative to every obstacle. You don't need to frame every setback as some cosmic riddle. Sometimes the best way to move forward is to stop looking for the hidden meaning and just look at the facts. What's working? What's not? What can you control? What do you need to let go of? Instead of asking, why is the universe testing me? A better question is, what do I want? And what steps can I take to get closer to it? That puts the power back in your hands, not in some invisible cosmic grading system. So the next time you hear someone say, the universe is just testing you, pause and think, is this actually a test? Or is this a situation where I need to make a choice? Don't romanticize suffering. Don't wait around for a reward that may never come. You don't need the universe to grade you before you're allowed to have good things. You're allowed to choose them now.
Failure is always a lesson. You've probably heard the phrase, there's no such thing as failure, only lessons. It's catchy, right? Feels like something you'd see on a motivational poster with a mountain in the background. And to be fair, sometimes it's true. Failing can absolutely teach you things you'd never learn otherwise. But here's the trap. Believing that every single failure must be packed with wisdom. Sometimes, honestly, failure is just failure. It's not a lesson. It's not the universe whispering secrets to you. Sometimes it's just bad timing, bad luck, or circumstances completely outside your control. Think about this. Let's say you open a cafe. You've got the perfect menu, you've worked your tail off, you've trained your staff, and you're genuinely good at what you do. But what if 2 months later, a huge chain coffee shop moves in across the street with cheaper prices and a marketing budget that makes yours look like pocket change? Your cafe doesn't make it. Now, people might tell you, there's a lesson in this failure. But really, what's the lesson? That you're not allowed to compete with corporate giants? That you should have had psychic powers to predict this? No. Sometimes it's not about you doing something wrong. It's just the way things played out. But here's the sneaky thing about self-help culture. It loves to romanticize failure. You hear quotes like, fail forward, or every failure brings you closer to success. And sure, that can keep you motivated when things fall apart. But if you take it too literally, you start forcing meaning onto situations that really don't have any. You might spend months analyzing a failure, asking yourself, what's the lesson here? What's the hidden gift? When, honestly, there isn't one. And instead of moving forward, you just stay stuck, trying to decode something that doesn't exist. Let's be real for a second. Sometimes failure is just bad luck. You might have launched an amazing travel business right before a global pandemic shut everything down. Was that a personal failure? No, that was just terrible timing. Or maybe you auditioned for a role and you nailed it, but the director picked someone taller, younger, or who just looked the part. Was there a lesson about your talent or work ethic? Probably not. Sometimes you were simply not the chosen one, And that's not a moral judgment on your worth. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying failure never has lessons. Plenty of times it does. Maybe you underestimated the work involved. Maybe you ignored red flags in a relationship. Maybe you rushed into something without enough preparation. Those failures can be gold mines of insight. But the danger is in thinking that every failure has to be meaningful. That mindset can turn into a kind of gaslighting, where instead of admitting, yeah, I got unlucky, you beat yourself up trying to find some hidden lesson that makes you responsible for everything. And here's the thing. If you start treating every failure like a hidden lesson, you can actually end up overcorrecting. Imagine a basketball player who misses a single shot. If he assumes that miss must mean I need to totally change my form, my training, my diet, my mindset, he's going to spiral. When in reality, sometimes the ball just bounces the wrong way. Sometimes failure isn't a signal that you need to overhaul your life. It's just one data point in a messy, unpredictable world. Here's another angle. Telling people failure is always a lesson can come off almost cruel when they're going through something devastating. Imagine someone who loses their job, their home, or a loved one, and you tell them, well, everything happens for a reason. This failure must have a lesson. That's not helpful. That's dismissive. It minimizes their pain. Not everything has to be turned into a positive soundbite. Sometimes the kindest, most truthful thing you can say is, this sucks. I'm sorry. It wasn't your fault. So how should we actually think about failure? Maybe like this. Sometimes it teaches you something, and sometimes it doesn't. The trick is not to force meaning where there is none. Instead, ask yourself, is there anything useful I can take from this? If the answer is yes, great, use it. If the answer is no, then don't waste your time digging for hidden wisdom. Move on, regroup, and try again. And honestly, that's freeing. Because if you stop trying to turn every failure into a life-changing lesson, you stop carrying all that unnecessary guilt. You stop assuming that you're always the problem. You stop romanticizing pain as if it has to serve some grand purpose. And you give yourself permission to see failure for what it sometimes is. Bad timing, bad odds, or just plain bad luck. At the end of the day, failure doesn't define you, and it doesn't always need to teach you. Sometimes the only lesson is pick yourself up and keep going. You can be anything you want. You've probably heard this one since you were a kid. You can be anything you want if you just believe in yourself. It's the kind of thing teachers, parents, or motivational speakers love to say. And on the surface, it feels super inspiring, right? Like the world is wide open and all you have to do is dream big. But here's the uncomfortable truth. You actually can't be anything you want. Not because you're not good enough, but because life just doesn't work that way. Biology, money, circumstances, and plain old reality set some limits. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine I decide tomorrow that I want to be an NBA player. Sounds cool, right? Problem is, I'm not 6'7". I don't have the genetics of LeBron James, and I didn't spend my childhood in an elite basketball program. No amount of believing in myself is going to magically change those facts. Sure, I can play ball for fun. I can improve my game. I can even join a local league. But am I going to be on a championship team dunking on professionals? Nope. The door is just closed. And it's not just sports. Let's say someone wants to be a professional opera singer, but they're tone deaf. Can they improve their singing? Definitely. Can they become better with training? Of course. But become the next Pavarotti? Sorry, biology doesn't bend to motivational quotes. Or maybe you dream of being an astronaut, but you've got health conditions that disqualify you from space travel. Or you're 50 years old trying to join NASA's training program. Not happening. And that's not negativity. That's just reality. But here's the interesting thing. When people tell you you can be anything you want, they're usually not trying to lie. They're trying to give you permission to dream bigger than your current box. The problem is when we take it literally, because the truth is the world has limits. Economics play a massive role. Some dreams require resources you might not have. If you grow up in poverty, it's a lot harder to become a concert pianist when your family can't afford lessons or even a piano. Or maybe you wanted to go to med school, but the debt would crush you, so you had to pivot. That's not about lack of effort, it's about the system you're in. And then there's life circumstances. Maybe you were the oldest child in your family and had to take care of siblings instead of chasing your dream. Or maybe you had to give up school to work early. Or maybe life just threw a curveball. Illness, a pandemic, a family crisis, and your dream wasn't possible anymore. Do those things mean you failed? Not at all. It just means be anything wasn't realistic to begin with. Now here's where I think the real truth sits. You can't be anything you want, but you can be something meaningful within your reality. And that's way more empowering than the empty promise. For example, you might not become a world-famous singer, but you can absolutely find joy in singing locally, teaching music, or just filling your life with it. You might not become a billionaire tech mogul, but you can build a stable, fulfilling career in tech that pays well and gives you freedom. The difference is that one is rooted in fantasy and the other is rooted in possibility. Here's another problem with the be anything mindset. It sets people up for burnout and shame. Imagine you spend years chasing a dream that was never realistic for you. Not because you didn't work hard enough, but because the odds were stacked against you from the start. When it doesn't work out, you don't blame biology or economics or bad timing. You blame yourself. You think, maybe I just didn't believe enough. Maybe I didn't grind hard enough. And that self-blame can eat you alive. But what if, instead of saying you can be anything you want, we said you can explore who you are, figure out what's possible, and carve out a path that works for you? That's not as flashy for a motivational poster, but it's way more real. It encourages people to dream, but also to adapt. It makes space for trial and error. It respects the fact that life isn't fair, but it also highlights that you still have agency to create a meaningful life within your lane. Here's the kicker. A lot of the most fulfilled people in life didn't end up doing the thing they wanted when they were young. Maybe they wanted to be a rock star, but they became a music teacher who changed kids' lives. Maybe they dreamed of being a pro athlete, but ended up running community sports programs that brought joy to hundreds of people. Those lives matter. Those stories matter. And they're not less valuable just because they didn't match the anything you want fantasy. So let's be real. No, you can't be anything you want. You can't defy biology, erase social structures, or bend time, but you can still be something amazing. You can still build a life that makes sense for you. And honestly, that's not limiting. That's freeing. Because when you stop chasing impossible outcomes, you finally have space to chase what's actually in front of you. One perfect morning routine will fix your life. All right, let's talk about the holy grail of self-help YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, the magical, life-changing morning routine. You know the ones I'm talking about. Some influencer wakes up at 4:30 a.m., makes their bed with military precision, meditates for 20 minutes, journals about gratitude, takes an ice-cold shower, makes a kale smoothie, reads 3 chapters of a self-help book, runs 5 miles, and still has time to post a perfectly edited photo of their sunrise coffee. And the message is always the same. If you just copy my routine, your whole life will transform. Sounds great, right? Except it's a total myth. There's no single perfect morning routine that works for everyone. And here's why. First off, people have different biological rhythms. Some people are naturally morning larks. They wake up buzzing with energy, ready to tackle the day. Others are night owls. They do their best thinking and creating at midnight, not at 6 a.m. So telling a night owl that the secret to success is waking up at dawn is basically setting them up for misery. You're not lazy if your brain wakes up later. That's just how your body clock is wired. Then there's lifestyle and responsibilities. Let's be real. If you're a single 22-year-old living in a studio apartment, you might have the luxury to wake up at 5 a.m. and spend 2 hours on self-care before work. But if you're a parent with 2 kids, or if you work night shifts, or if you have to commute an hour to your job, that perfect morning routine becomes impossible. Not because you don't have discipline, but because your life just doesn't fit into that influencer's template. And let's not forget personal preferences. Maybe journaling just doesn't work for you. Maybe meditating makes you more anxious instead of calm. Maybe cold showers feel less like mental toughness training and more like punishment. The idea that you're failing at life because you don't do someone else's exact checklist is absurd. Here's the sneaky problem with the perfect morning routine myth. It makes you think that structure is more important than substance. Like if you just nail down this 10-step sequence before 8 a.m., suddenly your relationships, career, and mental health will magically align. But routines are tools, not solutions. A hammer doesn't build a house on its own. It just helps you get there. Think about it. If morning routines were the key to success, then everyone who wakes up early and meditates would be thriving. But we all know people who get up at 5 a.m. every day, exercise, eat clean, and still feel empty, stuck, or stressed. Why? Because life isn't fixed by routines. Life is shaped by meaning, choices, relationships, and habits you actually stick with long term. Now, that's not to say routines are useless. Far from it. A good routine can anchor your day and help reduce decision fatigue. For example, if you start your morning with something grounding, maybe it's stretching, maybe it's coffee and silence, maybe it's walking your dog, that sets the tone for the day. But the right routine is deeply personal. What works for a CEO in Silicon Valley might not work for a teacher, a nurse, or a freelance artist. And that's okay. Here's a better mindset. Instead of chasing someone else's perfect routine, experiment until you find your own functional routine. Ask yourself, what actually helps me feel more centered? What energizes me? What makes my day flow smoother? If that's journaling, great. If it's dancing in your kitchen while blasting music, also great. The point isn't to follow a guru's list. The point is to design a rhythm that fits your life. And let's be real, no morning routine in the world will fix your life. If your job is soul-sucking, if you're lonely, if you're drowning in debt, waking up at 4:30 a.m. and drinking lemon water isn't going to make those problems vanish. At best, it might give you a little extra energy to deal with them.
At worst, it becomes another stick to beat yourself with when you inevitably fall off the routine. So instead of obsessing over perfect mornings, maybe the healthier question is, how can I create moments in my day that keep me grounded? Maybe your routine is simply pausing to breathe between meetings, or calling a friend after work, or making sure you get sunlight before noon. Tiny, flexible habits like those actually do more for your well-being than forcing yourself into some rigid 15-step process. So yeah, stop chasing the myth that one perfect morning routine will save you. It won't. What it can do, if you make it personal, is give you a little scaffolding for your day. But the real work, that's in how you live the other 23 hours.
Success is a 100% self-made. You've probably heard the phrase, "I'm self-made. Nobody helped me. I pulled myself up by my bootstraps." It's a common line in self-help circles, business biographies, and motivational speeches. The idea is that success is entirely the result of individual effort, pure grit, hard work, and hustle. And sure, hard work plays a role. But let's be honest. The idea that anyone is 100% self-made is one of the biggest myths out there. Let's break it down. Imagine you start a business, and it takes off. Did you do that completely alone? Well, who taught you to read, write, or even understand math? Who built the internet that allows you to market your product? Who paved the roads that let trucks deliver your goods? Who gave you advice, encouragement, or maybe even a small loan when you started? Even if you didn't have financial help, I guarantee there were teachers, mentors, friends, or even strangers along the way who shaped your path. The truth is, success is never created in a vacuum. It's like baking a cake. You might have baked it, but someone grew the wheat, someone sold you the sugar, someone invented the oven, and someone taught you how to follow a recipe. Saying you did it 100% alone is like ignoring half the ingredients. Now, this myth is seductive because it makes people feel powerful. It's like, if I control everything, then my destiny is entirely in my hands. But the dark side of that belief is it creates unnecessary guilt and shame. If you believe success is 100% self-made, then by default, failure must also be 100% your fault. And that's just not true. Life is complicated. People succeed or fail based on a messy mix of effort, timing, privilege, luck, and support networks. Let's talk about privilege for a second. Not in a political way, but in a practical way. Think about two people starting at the same line. One grows up in a stable household with access to education, encouragement, and maybe even some seed money to start a project. The other grows up in a chaotic environment with no financial cushion, working 2 jobs just to stay afloat. Can both be successful? Absolutely. But are they running the same race? Not even close. One has a smoother track while the other is running uphill with weights tied to their ankles. To ignore that and call everyone self-made is dishonest. And here's another thing. Even the people we idolize as self-made usually aren't. Think about Steve Jobs. People love to call him the ultimate self-made genius. But Jobs didn't invent computers alone in a garage. He had Steve Wozniak, who was a technical wizard. He had investors who took a chance on Apple. He had employees who built the actual products. Without them, there's no iPhone, no Apple empire. Same with Elon Musk. Tesla and SpaceX weren't born from him single-handedly wiring batteries in his basement. They're the result of thousands of engineers, designers, and scientists working together. So why does this myth stick around? Because it fits the hero story we love to tell. We want to believe in lone wolves who conquer the world because it's inspiring. It makes us feel like maybe we can do the same. But in reality, the most successful people aren't lone wolves. They're leaders of packs. They thrive because they know how to leverage communities, find mentors, and build teams. Now, does that mean effort doesn't matter? Of course not. Effort is huge. Without persistence, resilience, and dedication, no amount of support will magically carry you to success. But effort is one part of a bigger ecosystem. You can work insanely hard, but if you're working on the wrong thing, at the wrong time, with no guidance or connections, it's like running on a treadmill. Lots of sweat, but no forward progress. And here's the freeing part. Once you drop the myth that success is 100% self-made, you stop beating yourself up for not doing it all alone. You realize it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to lean on mentors. It's okay to acknowledge the people and systems that helped you along the way. That doesn't make your achievements less impressive. If anything, it makes them more real. Think about it this way. When you win a game, you don't pretend you played it without a team. You celebrate the win together. Success in life is the same. It's not just about your hustle. It's about the web of people, knowledge, and opportunities that supported you. So next time you hear someone brag about being 100% self-made, remember, they probably had teachers, friends, books, mentors, or even random acts of kindness that nudged them forward. And that's not a weakness. That's just being human. The real myth isn't that you can't be successful. The real myth is thinking you have to do it all by yourself.
Confidence comes from faking it. You've probably heard the phrase, fake it till you make it. It's tossed around in self-help books, business seminars, and even in pep talks from friends. The idea is simple. If you just act confident, eventually you'll become confident. Smile bigger, walk taller, shake hands firmly, and pretend you know what you're doing until your brain catches up. Sounds good, right? Except here's the problem. Faking it doesn't always lead to making it. In fact, for a lot of people, it can make things worse. Let's be real. Pretending you're confident when you're not can feel like wearing shoes 2 sizes too small. You might pull it off for a while, but deep down, you're uncomfortable, and eventually that discomfort shows. The whole time you are faking it, your brain is whispering, "You're lying. You're not confident. Everyone can tell." Instead of building confidence, you end up reinforcing your insecurities. This is especially true when you tie your identity to the performance. For example, let's say you're terrified of public speaking. You hear the advice, just fake confidence, nobody will notice. So you stand up in front of a crowd, force a smile, and push through. But while you're talking, your hands are shaking, your voice cracks, and inside, you're panicking. When it's over, instead of feeling proud, you feel like a fraud. You think, I can't even fake it right. That's the opposite of confidence. That's self-doubt on steroids. Now, don't get me wrong. There's value in practicing confident behaviors. Standing tall, making eye contact, and speaking clearly can trick your body into calming down a little bit. Psychologists even talk about the embodied cognition effect, how your body posture can influence your emotions. But that's not the same as pretending you're someone you're not. Confidence doesn't magically appear because you wore a power suit or copied someone else's swagger. Real confidence comes from competence, from knowing you've built skills, put in the work, and survived setbacks. Think about it. If you study for a test, practice your sport, or rehearse a presentation, your confidence naturally grows. Why? Because you know you're prepared. You don't have to fake anything. The danger of the fake it myth is that it skips over the actual foundation of confidence: experience and evidence. When you practice, learn, and build small wins, you give yourself proof that you're capable. That proof is what quiets the inner critic, not pretending you're already at the finish line. Here's another issue. Faking it can sometimes create disconnection with others. People can sense when you're putting on an act. Maybe not always consciously, but they pick up on little cues: forced laughter, over-the-top gestures, nervous energy. And when people feel you're being inauthentic, it doesn't build trust. It actually makes relationships harder, whether that's in business, dating, or friendships. And let's be honest, keeping up an act is exhausting. If you constantly feel like you have to fake confidence to be liked, respected, or successful, then you never get to relax into your real self. It becomes a performance you can't take off. Over time, that pressure builds into burnout or even anxiety. You don't just feel insecure, you feel like an imposter living behind a mask. So what's the alternative? Instead of fake it till you make it, try practice it till you become it. That shift is huge. Don't fake being confident in areas you're not ready for. Practice showing up, taking small steps, and letting your skills grow. Nervous about public speaking? Start with a small group before jumping on stage. Unsure in social situations? Practice having one-on-one conversations before forcing yourself to dominate a room. Each small success builds real confidence that no one can take away from you. Here's another approach: honesty. Sometimes the most confident thing you can do is admit your nerves. Saying, "I'm a little nervous, but I'm excited to share this with you," is way more authentic and relatable than trying to act like you're bulletproof. People connect with honesty more than with polished performances. And funny enough, that connection often boosts your confidence because you realize you don't have to be perfect to be respected. Here's the kicker. Confidence isn't the absence of fear or insecurity. It's the ability to move forward despite them. It's not about faking your way out of discomfort, but about building the resilience and trust in yourself that you can handle discomfort. So next time you hear "fake it till you make it," pause and think, is this helping me grow, or is this making me feel like a fraud? If it's the second, drop the act and focus on the real work: practice, patience, and small wins. Because true confidence doesn't come from pretending to be someone else. It comes from becoming more of who you already are.
Self-discipline solves everything. You've probably seen those motivational posts online that scream at you, "You don't need motivation, you need discipline." Or that classic line, "Winners are just losers who never gave up." The message is clear. If your life isn't where you want it to be, it's because you lack discipline. Wake up at 5 a.m., hit the gym every day, stick to your schedule no matter what, and boom, success will magically follow. Sounds empowering on the surface, right? But here's the catch. That advice completely ignores reality for millions of people, because life isn't just about willpower, and self-discipline isn't a magic switch you can flip on to fix everything. Let's start with something obvious. Not everyone's brain works the same way. If you're neurotypical, maybe discipline feels like a muscle. The more you train it, the stronger it gets. But if you're neurodivergent, say you have ADHD, autism, or another brain difference, discipline doesn't play by the same rules. Telling someone with ADHD to just be disciplined is like telling someone with a broken leg to run faster. It doesn't address the real struggle, and it often makes the person feel even more broken when they can't live up to that standard. Now, let's add mental health into the mix. Depression, anxiety, PTSD. These aren't just moods you can push through with grit. They physically change how your brain and body function. Depression can drain your energy so much that even getting out of bed feels like climbing Everest. Anxiety can make your heart race and your thoughts spiral, sabotaging your focus. In those moments, self-discipline isn't just tough, it's nearly impossible. And when you fail, you don't think, oh, well, today was hard. You think, I'm weak. I have no discipline. The shame doubles the weight you're already carrying. That's the dark side of the self-discipline myth. It blames individuals for struggles that aren't about laziness at all. It tells people, if you can't do it, it's your fault, instead of recognizing the role of health, environment, privilege, or support systems. Think about it this way. If someone can't sleep because they have insomnia, would you tell them, just be disciplined and sleep 8 hours? Of course not. You'd say, hey, maybe you should see a doctor, try different strategies, or adjust your lifestyle. But when it comes to productivity, society acts like discipline is the cure-all pill, when in reality, it's just one piece of the puzzle. And here's something nobody talks about. Too much discipline can actually backfire. When you live by rigid rules and punish yourself every time you slip, life starts feeling like a prison sentence. You're not building success, you're building resentment. You start associating your goals with pain and failure instead of growth and joy. That's why so many people burn out after following extreme discipline challenges. They push hard for 30 days, then collapse and feel worse than before. So what's the healthier truth? Discipline matters, sure, but it's not everything. It works best when combined with self-compassion, structure, and support. Instead of expecting military-level control every day, focus on building systems that make discipline easier. For example, if you know you struggle with distractions, don't rely on sheer willpower. Use apps that block social media, or set up a workspace that minimizes temptation. That's not weakness, that's smart strategy. And if mental health or neurodivergence make discipline harder for you, that doesn't mean you're doomed, it just means your path looks different. Maybe your discipline isn't waking up at 5 a.m., maybe it's remembering to take your meds, or setting one small, achievable goal each day. Those wins count. They build momentum in a way that fits your reality. Here's a little perspective shift. Instead of asking, why don't I have more discipline? Ask, what support do I need to make this easier? Because discipline without support is just punishment. But discipline with support becomes sustainable growth. And honestly, we need to remember this. Humans aren't robots. We're not designed to run on strict programs without error. We need flexibility, rest, and forgiveness. Some days you'll crush your goals. Other days you'll struggle to just exist. Both are part of being human. So the next time someone says, self-discipline solves everything, call it out for what it is, a half-truth. Discipline helps, yes, but ignoring mental health, neurodivergence, and real-life circumstances doesn't just miss the point. It makes people miserable. The real solution isn't more punishment, it's more understanding.
Money doesn't buy happiness.
You've heard this one a million times, right? Money doesn't buy happiness. It's one of those feel-good quotes that gets slapped on inspirational posters with sunsets in the background. The idea is noble. Happiness comes from within, not from stuff. But let's be real for a second. Money might not literally buy happiness, but it sure as hell buys the things that make life less stressful. And that, in turn, makes happiness a whole lot easier to find. Think about it. When people say money doesn't matter, they're usually already past the point of worrying about rent, groceries, or whether the electricity will stay on. It's easy to say money isn't everything when your basic needs are already secured. But if you've ever been up at night wondering how to pay bills, or had to choose between buying food and paying for medicine, you know that lack of money creates constant, grinding stress. And stress is the #1 happiness killer. Imagine two people. Person A wakes up in the morning and thinks, "Should I grab a coffee on the way to work?" Person B wakes up thinking, "Do I have enough gas to get to work this week?" They're both alive. They both have dreams, but their mental load is completely different. Person A can't afford to focus on growth, hobbies, or relationships. Person B is just trying to survive. Now, tell me again that money doesn't buy happiness. Psychologists have studied this a lot, and the results are pretty eye-opening. They've found that money does improve happiness up to a certain point. In many studies, that number was around $75,000 a year in the US, adjusted a bit depending on where you live. Why that number? Because it's roughly the point where your basic needs, comfort, and small luxuries are covered. After that, the curve flattens out. Buying a bigger house, fancier car, or luxury watch doesn't add the same boost as simply having your bills paid and savings for emergencies. But here's the twist. Newer studies suggest that happiness keeps rising with money even past that $75K threshold, just not as sharply. Why? Because more money means more freedom. Freedom to say no to toxic jobs. Freedom to spend time with your family instead of working 3 shifts. Freedom to travel, to explore, to invest in experiences instead of scraping by. Sure, buying a Lamborghini won't make you permanently happy, but being able to pay for a reliable car so you don't break down on the highway every other week, that's a happiness upgrade right there. Let's bust another myth while we're here. Some people twist money doesn't buy happiness into being poor makes you humble and wise, as if financial struggle is some kind of spiritual gift. That's toxic nonsense. Struggling financially doesn't make you a better person. It just drains your energy and steals your peace of mind. People romanticize poverty only when they're not the ones living it. Here's something worth pointing out. Money doesn't directly buy happiness, but it buys choices. And choices shape your happiness. You can choose healthier food instead of the cheapest instant noodles. You can choose therapy without worrying how you'll afford it. You can choose a safe neighborhood instead of one where you don't feel secure walking at night. Each of those choices directly impacts your mental health and overall well-being. Now, does that mean money is the only ingredient in happiness? Not at all. We've all seen super rich celebrities who spiral into depression or addiction. That's proof that once your basic needs are met, happiness depends more on relationships, purpose, and health than on piling up cash. But that doesn't erase the truth. Money provides the foundation. It's hard to work on finding your purpose when you're skipping meals to stretch your paycheck. So the real myth isn't whether money buys happiness, it's the oversimplification. Money alone won't guarantee happiness, but lack of money almost guarantees misery.
Saying otherwise just shames people who are struggling, as if their unhappiness is a personal failing instead of a reflection of their financial reality. Here's a better way to phrase it. Money doesn't buy happiness, but it buys peace of mind, and peace of mind makes happiness possible. That small shift changes everything. Because instead of treating money like this dirty, unspiritual thing, we can acknowledge it as a tool. And like any tool, it's all about how you use it. So next time you hear someone smugly say, money doesn't buy happiness, ask yourself, would they still believe that if they suddenly had to choose between paying rent or eating dinner? Probably not.
Healing isn't linear. We've all seen those cheesy self-help graphics, a straight arrow pointing upward, maybe labeled healing or growth. The message is simple. Once you start working on yourself, you'll get better every day. No setbacks, no backward steps, just pure forward motion. Sounds nice, right? The problem is, it's a lie. Healing, whether we're talking about mental health, grief, trauma, or even physical recovery, doesn't look like a straight line. It looks messy. It looks like scribbles. It looks like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, sometimes 5 steps back. Let's put it in real-life terms. Imagine you just got over a breakup. At first, you're devastated, crying into your pillow, binge-watching sad movies. Then, a few weeks later, you start to feel better. You're laughing with friends, maybe even dating again. You think, yes, I'm healed. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, a random song comes on the radio and you're right back in tears thinking about your ex. Does that mean you failed at healing? Not at all. It means healing isn't linear. Or let's talk about mental health. Someone with anxiety might go months feeling stable, calm, like they've got everything under control. Then, one stressful week at work and boom, panic attack. It doesn't erase the progress they made, but it feels like it sometimes. And here's the dangerous part. If you buy into the myth that healing is supposed to be a straight line, those setbacks feel like failure. You start beating yourself up, thinking, why am I back here again? I thought I was over this. That shame and disappointment can be worse than the actual setback. Here's the truth. Healing is more like waves than a ladder. Sometimes the tide goes out and you feel free and light. Other times the tide comes rushing back in and it feels like you're drowning. But over time, the overall direction still moves forward, even if the day-to-day feels chaotic. There's actually science behind this. Psychologists have studied recovery from trauma, and they found that people experience something called oscillation. That means your mind naturally cycles between times of progress and times of struggle. And guess what? That's normal. Your brain literally needs those pauses and setbacks to process and adapt. If it were a straight line, you'd probably burn out. Even physical healing works this way. Have you ever tried to get in shape after not exercising for a while? You hit the gym, feel good for a week, and then, bam, your muscles are sore, you're exhausted, and you wonder if you're actually getting weaker. But then, if you stick with it, you realize those dips are part of building strength. The soreness is your body rebuilding. The fatigue is your system adapting. Growth happens in cycles, not in smooth, straight climbs. So why does the myth of linear healing stick around? Because it's comforting. We want certainty. We want to believe that if we just do the right steps, journal, meditate, read the right self-help books, we'll steadily march toward happiness. But life isn't a factory assembly line. It's more like a dance. Sometimes you stumble. Sometimes you spin in circles. Sometimes you just sit down and catch a breath. And that's okay. The danger of the linear healing myth is that it makes people give up too early. Imagine you're recovering from depression and you've been feeling a little better for months. Then suddenly you hit a rough patch. If you believe healing is linear, you'll think, I must be broken beyond repair. Nothing is working. But if you understand healing is cyclical, you'll think, this is just part of the process. I've been here before, and I'll get through it again. That shift in mindset is huge. Here's the takeaway. Healing isn't about never falling down again. It's about noticing that when you fall, you get back up a little faster than last time. The lows might still come, but maybe they're not quite as deep. The storm still hit, but maybe you've learned how to grab an umbrella. That's real progress. So if you're in one of those backslide moments, crying over something you thought you were done with, feeling anxious after months of calm, or grieving all over again years after a loss, don't panic. You're not broken, you're human. Healing is messy, it loops around, it takes time. But step back and look at the bigger picture, and you'll see that even with all the zigzags, you're still moving forward.
You need to find your life purpose. All right, let's talk about this big, heavy myth. The idea that every single person has this grand, cosmic life purpose they're supposed to discover. You've probably heard it 1,000 times in self-help books, motivational speeches, or Instagram captions. Find your purpose and you'll never work a day in your life. Sounds inspiring, right? But here's the catch. It also freaks a lot of people out. Because what if you don't know your purpose? What if you never figure it out? Suddenly, instead of motivation, you're left with this existential dread, like you're failing at life because you don't have a neatly defined calling. Think about the pressure baked into that statement. It's not just telling you to live well, or to explore your interests, or to contribute to your community. Nope. It's telling you that somewhere out there, hidden like buried treasure, is your one true purpose. And if you don't find it, you're wasting your life. That's a huge weight to carry. It makes life feel like a puzzle you're constantly behind on solving. Here's the truth. Most people don't have one singular, shining life purpose. And that's not a flaw. It's normal. For many, purpose shifts as life changes. Maybe your purpose feels like raising kids during one chapter. Then later, it's building a business or volunteering or just being the reliable friend in your group. Humans aren't static, so why should our purpose be locked into one fixed destiny? Let me give you a real-world example. Say you're a college student, and everyone around you is obsessed with finding their passion or discovering their life's mission. Meanwhile, you're just trying to figure out what you want for dinner. You feel behind, like everyone else got the map and you missed the memo. But fast forward 10 years, maybe you've worked in 3 different industries, traveled a bit, and realized that what gives you the most fulfillment isn't some lofty purpose, but smaller things. Helping a coworker, cooking for your family, or creating art in your free time. Guess what? That's valid. That's meaningful. That's life. Psychologists have actually studied this, and they found that searching obsessively for the one true purpose can backfire. It creates paralysis. You spend so much time searching for the perfect answer that you don't engage fully with the life in front of you. It's like standing at a buffet with 50 amazing dishes, but instead of eating, you're panicking because you think there's only one correct plate you're supposed to pick. Meanwhile, everyone else is happily eating. There's also a hidden elitism in the life purpose myth. Not everyone has the privilege to chase after a dreamy calling. Some people are just trying to pay rent, raise kids, or keep food on the table. Does that mean their lives are purposeless? Absolutely not. In fact, for many people, purpose is found in those everyday responsibilities. There's honor in survival, in caring for loved ones, in contributing in quiet ways that don't make headlines, but still matter deeply. And here's another angle. What if your purpose isn't something you find, but something you create? Maybe instead of waiting for the universe to hand you a neatly wrapped destiny, you get to shape meaning out of the things you already care about. That takes the pressure off. Instead of asking, "What's my purpose?" you can ask, "What feels meaningful to me right now?" That question is way more doable.
This is where people often get stuck. They think purpose has to be huge, curing diseases, changing the world, and becoming famous. But sometimes the purpose is small. Maybe your purpose today is to be kind to a stranger. Maybe next year it's to write a book. Maybe 5 years from now, it's to grow tomatoes in your backyard and share them with your neighbors. Purpose doesn't have to be permanent. It doesn't have to be universal. It just has to matter to you. So, here's the big takeaway. Chasing life purpose as if it's a single golden key can make you miserable. It sets up a game you can't win because the rules are vague and the goalpost keeps moving. Instead, think about a purpose like a playlist. You don't have to listen to one song forever. You can add new tracks, change the vibe, explore different moods. Over time, that collection tells the story of your life, and it's just as valid as having one big, epic anthem. If you've ever felt stressed about not knowing your purpose, take a breath. You're not broken. You're not behind. You're living, experimenting, trying things out, and that's exactly how meaning is built.
Success equals constant productivity. Let's be real. We live in a culture that worships productivity. Everywhere you look, there's some guru or influencer telling you to optimize every second of your day. Wake up at 5 a.m., crush your morning routine, work on your side hustle, answer emails while you're eating lunch, learn a new skill before bed. If you're not constantly doing something, it's like you're falling behind. But here's the myth. Success is not about being productive every waking moment. In fact, trying to live that way is a fast track to burnout. Your brain isn't a machine. It's more like a battery. It needs time to recharge, or else it just sputters out. Think about the last time you were bored. Maybe you were staring at the ceiling, or stuck in traffic with nothing to do, or just lying in bed with your phone dead. What probably happened? Your mind started wandering. Random thoughts bubbled up. You connected dots you hadn't connected before. That's not wasted time. That's your brain doing some of its best work in the background. There's actually science behind this. When you're doing nothing, your brain switches into what's called the default mode network. It's basically a rest state where your brain starts making connections and processing information in ways it can't when you're laser focused on a task. This is why some of your best ideas pop up in the shower, or while you're going for a walk, or just zoning out. It's not magic. It's your brain finally having the breathing room to think creatively. But the hustle culture myth makes us terrified of downtime. If you're not busy, you feel guilty. You tell yourself, I should be working, I should be grinding, I should be doing something useful. But constant busyness doesn't equal effectiveness. If anything, it just makes you less sharp. Imagine trying to sprint for 24 hours straight. You wouldn't call that efficient, you'd call it insane. Yet we expect our minds to sprint nonstop and still perform at their best. Here's another way to look at it. Creativity is like farming. You can't just keep harvesting crops without letting the soil rest, or it becomes barren. Your mind works the same way. Rest and boredom are the nutrients that replenish the soil so that new ideas can grow. Without them, you're just planting seeds in dry dirt and wondering why nothing comes up. And let's not forget, rest isn't just about creativity. It's about mental health, too. Constant productivity turns people into robots. And when you're living that way, even your wins stop feeling satisfying. You hit a goal,
And instead of celebrating, you immediately think, okay, what's next? Gotta keep moving. That hamster wheel never ends. True success isn't about how many hours you grind. It's about whether your life actually feels fulfilling. Here is something people rarely admit. Some of the most successful people you admire got their breakthroughs because they took breaks. Steve Jobs used to take long walks to think. Einstein played the violin when he was stuck on problems. Even writers often talk about procrastinating productively by stepping away from the page. They weren't slacking off, they were giving their brains the space to incubate ideas. So the next time you feel guilty for not being productive, flip the script. Ask yourself, am I actually recharging my mind so I can come back sharper? Because sometimes the most productive thing you can do is nothing.
Tracking habits makes you disciplined. Okay, let's talk about habit trackers. You've seen them, right? Those sleek apps, bullet journals, or fancy charts where you get to tick off little boxes every time you drink water, meditate, floss, or whatever. And don't get me wrong, on the surface, they look awesome. It feels satisfying to check things off, like you're leveling up in a video game. The myth is this: if you just track your habits, you'll magically become disciplined. The reality? Sometimes it works, but a lot of times it backfires in ways people don't expect. Here's why. Habit tracking can shift your focus from actually living the habit to just scoring points. Instead of brushing your teeth because you want a healthy mouth, you're brushing just so you don't break your streak. Instead of journaling to reflect, you're scribbling something down just to fill the box. It becomes less about meaning and more about performance. And here's the kicker. When you inevitably miss a day because you're human, not a robot, you can spiral into guilt. Suddenly, that little empty square on your chart feels like a personal failure. You start thinking, I've ruined my streak. What's the point? I'm a mess. I'll never get this right. Some people even give up entirely because missing one day feels like erasing all their progress. That's not discipline. That's obsession disguised as self-help. There's also a sneaky trap here. When the habit tracker becomes your goal instead of the habit itself. Like, if you meditate just to keep the streak alive, but you're sitting there fidgeting, checking your watch, thinking, okay, that's 2 minutes, done. Then are you really meditating? Or are you just gaming the system to make yourself feel productive? It's almost like when people go to the gym, take a selfie, and then leave without actually working out. The appearance of the habit replaces the actual benefit of the habit. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Psychologists have found that intrinsic motivation, doing something because it matters to you, lasts way longer than extrinsic motivation, like chasing a streak or collecting points. If your tracker becomes the whole reason you're doing the thing, your motivation is fragile. Break the streak and boom, motivation gone. But when you focus on why the habit matters, like walking because it clears your head, or journaling because it helps you process feelings, it doesn't matter if you miss a day. You'll naturally return to it because it adds value to your life. This isn't me saying habit trackers are evil.
They can be useful tools for building awareness, especially at the beginning. But the myth is thinking they're the secret weapon of discipline. True discipline is way messier. It's about showing up over time, forgiving yourself when you slip, and remembering the bigger picture. So here's the real test. If your tracker disappeared tomorrow, would you still keep the habits? If the answer is no, then the tracker owns you. That's when it stops being self-help and starts being self-sabotage. Bottom line, don't confuse a colorful app or a neatly drawn bullet journal spread with actual growth. Sometimes, discipline isn't about ticking boxes. It's about learning to live without them.
You must always forgive to move on. You've probably heard it 1,000 times. You need to forgive them, not for them, but for yourself. It's basically self-help's greatest hit. The idea is that forgiveness is this magical eraser for pain. That if you just let go, you'll feel lighter, freer, happier. And sure, in some cases, forgiveness really is healing. If a friend messed up, apologized, and showed they've changed, forgiving can lift a huge weight off your chest. But here's where the myth comes in. The belief that you must forgive every single person who's ever hurt you in order to move on. That's just not true, and in fact, it can make things worse. Let's be real. Some things that happen to us are not just little slip-ups. They're betrayals, traumas, abuses of trust. Stuff that leaves scars that don't fade just because you decide to say, "I forgive you." In those cases, forcing forgiveness can actually feel like betraying yourself. Like you're saying, what they did was okay, when deep down, it wasn't. Think about it this way. If someone stole your car, you wouldn't be expected to just hand them the keys again because you've forgiven them, right? Same with emotional wounds. Sometimes the healthiest move isn't to forgive, it's to set a boundary and never let that person back into your life. And let's talk about the guilt spiral this myth creates. Imagine you've been hurt badly, and you keep hearing advice like, "You'll never heal until you forgive." Now, instead of just dealing with your pain, you're also beating yourself up for not being able to forgive fast enough. Suddenly, your healing journey comes with homework you never signed up for. That's not fair. Healing should never feel like failing a test. Here's the thing. Forgiveness isn't the only path to peace. Sometimes acceptance works better. Acceptance doesn't mean saying what happened was okay. It means acknowledging it did happen and deciding you're not going to let it run your life anymore. It's like saying, "Yeah, that scar's there. It'll always be part of me, but I get to decide what I do from here." And here's something no one talks about. Anger can be healing, too. Righteous anger. The kind that says, "I deserved better than that, and I won't let it happen again." That fire can help you stand up for yourself, set boundaries, and create safer spaces. Forcing forgiveness too soon can actually smother that fire before it has a chance to protect you. There's even research showing that people who feel pressured to forgive before they're ready often end up more stressed, not less. Why? Because forgiveness, when it's authentic, feels empowering. But when it's forced, it feels fake. And deep down, you know you're lying to yourself. So let's flip the script. Instead of thinking, "I have to forgive to move on," try this. I get to choose what moving on looks like for me. For some people, that includes forgiveness. For others, it means distance, boundaries, or even indifference. All of those are valid ways of healing. At the end of the day, you don't owe anyone forgiveness. You don't even owe it to yourself if it doesn't feel right. What you do owe yourself is honesty about how you feel, what you need, and what's going to make you feel safe moving forward. So next time someone says, "You'll feel better if you forgive," you can smile and think, maybe. Or maybe I'll feel better when I stop carrying what they did and start living for myself. That's not bitterness, that's self-respect. Every problem has a mindset solution. Okay, let's be honest here. If you've ever dipped your toes into self-help, you've definitely heard the classic line, "Change your mindset and you change your life." It's catchy, it's empowering, and it makes you feel like you're in total control of your destiny. And don't get me wrong, mindset does matter. If you're constantly telling yourself, "I can't," well, you probably won't. Believing in your ability to grow or approaching challenges with a positive attitude really can shift the way you handle life. But here's where it gets messy. This idea that every single problem you face is just a mindset issue. Like, you're broke? That's a scarcity mindset. You're depressed? You're just not thinking positively enough. Struggling with an impossible workload? That's because you're not disciplined in your thoughts. See what happened there? Real external problems like economic inequality, workplace exploitation, or even just plain bad luck get reduced down to your fault, your mindset, your thinking. Suddenly, it's not about unfair systems, toxic environments, or lack of resources. It's all about whether or not you believe hard enough. And honestly, that's exhausting. Imagine telling someone working 2 jobs just to pay rent that the problem is their abundance mindset. Or telling someone with a chronic illness that they'd feel better if they just shifted their energy. That's not empowering, that's dismissive. It turns real struggles into personal failures, and it piles guilt on top of already tough situations. Let's take an everyday example. Say your car breaks down, and you don't have the money to fix it right away. A healthy mindset shift might be, okay, this sucks, but I'll figure out a way forward. Maybe borrow a car or take the bus for now. That's realistic optimism. But the toxic version of the mindset myth says if you really believed in abundance, your car wouldn't have broken down in the first place. Like, come on. Cars break down because of mechanical issues, not because your brain waves weren't aligned. Here's the sneaky part. Blaming everything on mindset sounds positive, but it actually keeps people stuck. Because if you believe you are the only problem, you'll spend all your energy fixing your thoughts instead of addressing the bigger picture. Instead of asking, "Why is my workplace burning me out?" you think, "Why can't I handle the pressure better?" Instead of asking, "Why is housing unaffordable?" you beat yourself up for not manifesting enough wealth. It traps you in a cycle of self-blame. The truth is, mindset is just one piece of the puzzle. Yes, resilience, optimism, and self-belief matter. They help you navigate challenges without falling apart, but they don't replace the need for real solutions. Therapy, community support, financial assistance, systemic change, those things matter too. You can't mindset your way out of everything. And here's a twist. Sometimes a little anger or realism is healthier than blind optimism. If your boss is exploiting you, the healthiest mindset isn't, "I just need to see this as a growth opportunity." No,
It's, this situation is unfair, and I need to either speak up or get out. That's not negativity. That's clarity. So next time you hear someone say, every problem has a mindset solution, take it with a grain of salt. Ask yourself, is this actually a mindset problem, or is it a real-world problem that needs action, support, or change outside of my brain? Because sometimes the most empowering thing isn't changing your thoughts. It's changing your circumstances. At the end of the day, your mind is powerful, but it's not magic. You're not broken because your positive vibes didn't solve everything. You're human, living in a world that's complicated and often unfair. And your struggles don't always mean you're thinking wrong. Sometimes they mean you're dealing with real obstacles that deserve more than a mindset shift. They deserve real solutions.
You should cut emotions out of decision-making. You've probably heard this one before. Don't let emotions cloud your judgment. It's the kind of advice that sounds smart, almost stoic, like you're leveling up into some hyper-rational decision-making machine. The idea is that if you remove feelings from the equation, you'll make cleaner, smarter, more objective choices. But here's the kicker. Emotions aren't the enemy of good decision-making. They're actually part of the system. Think about it. Emotions are your brain's way of flagging important information. Fear says, hey, something might hurt you here. Excitement says, this could be rewarding. Regret says, be careful, you've messed this up before. They're like your internal dashboard lights. If you ignore them, you're basically driving blind. Here's a wild fact. Neurologists have studied people with brain damage in areas that process emotion. And you know what happens? They don't become super logical masterminds. They actually become terrible at making decisions. They can list out all the pros and cons of a situation, but they'll get stuck, paralyzed by analysis, because they don't feel which choice matters to them. Without emotion, logic has no anchor. Think of it this way. If you're deciding what job to take, spreadsheets and salaries are helpful, sure, but emotions give you the why. Do you feel drained at the thought of staying where you are? Do you feel energized thinking about the new role? That emotional signal isn't weakness, it's guidance. The problem with self-help advice that tells you to cut emotions out is that it paints emotions as irrational villains. But the truth is, emotions only become destructive when you let them run wild without reflection. Anger, for example, can push you to stand up for yourself. But if you lashed out blindly, yeah, that backfires. Anxiety might stop you from jumping into something reckless, but if you let it control your every move, it becomes paralyzing. It's not about cutting emotions out, it's about interpreting them correctly. Let's do a quick everyday scenario. Imagine you're buying a car. If you only rely on logic, you'll compare gas mileage, safety ratings, monthly payments. That's all good. But what about the feeling you get when you sit in the driver's seat? The gut sense that one car makes you feel safe and confident, while another feels cramped and uncomfortable. That emotional input is just as important as the numbers. Otherwise, you might end up with the perfect car on paper that you secretly hate driving every single day. Or here's another one. Relationships. If you tried to date purely on logic, you'd be analyzing resumes, income, hobbies, background, but without emotions like attraction, warmth, and joy, you'd miss the actual experience of being with someone. No one wants to live in a romance spreadsheet. Now, let's be fair. There's a reason this myth exists. People have seen what happens when emotions completely take over.
Impulse shopping, rage-quitting jobs, texting your ex at 2 a.m. We've all been there. That's why people preach, don't be emotional. But the problem isn't the emotion itself, it's the lack of balance. Emotions should inform decisions, not hijack them. So instead of cutting emotions out, a better approach is this. Slow down and ask, what is this emotion trying to tell me? Anxiety might be telling you, prepare better. Excitement might be saying, this is worth taking a risk on. Sadness might be pointing you towards something you've been ignoring. These are signals, not weaknesses. And here's the big picture. Making good choices isn't about being 100% logical or 100% emotional. It's about letting your head and your heart have a conversation. Logic brings the data, emotions bring the meaning, and together they create decisions that you can actually live with. So no, you don't need to cut emotions out of decision-making. You need to learn how to listen to them without letting them run the show. Because at the end of the day, we're not robots. We're human. And being human means your best decisions will always be a blend of thought and feeling.
Confidence means never doubting yourself. When most people hear the word confidence, they picture someone striding into a room, chin up, back straight, speaking without a shred of hesitation. It's the classic movie version, the CEO who never second-guesses, the athlete who never flinches, the speaker who never stumbles. And because of that, a lot of us start believing this myth, that confidence means you never, ever doubt yourself. But let's be real. Nobody on this planet goes through life without doubt. Even the most confident people you admire, musicians, leaders, entrepreneurs, athletes, they all admit to having moments where they question themselves. The difference is, they don't let that doubt paralyze them. That's the actual secret. Confidence isn't the absence of doubt. It's the willingness to move forward despite doubt. Think about it this way. Doubt is kind of like a safety feature in your brain. It forces you to pause, to consider whether your plan is solid, whether you're missing something important. If you had zero doubt, you'd be reckless. You'd charge into situations without thinking them through. That's not confidence. That's arrogance. Real confidence includes room for humility. It's the ability to say, I might not know everything, but I trust that I can figure it out as I go. That little bit of doubt actually keeps you sharp. It pushes you to prepare before a presentation, to practice before a big game, to double-check your work before submitting it. In other words, doubt can be fuel, not a flaw. Let me give you an example. Imagine two job candidates. One walks in thinking, I already know everything. They'd be lucky to have me. That's zero doubt, maximum arrogance. The other walks in thinking, I don't have every skill they might want, but I've proven I can learn fast and adapt. That's confidence with humility. Guess which one usually makes a better impression? It's the second one, because people can sense the difference between grounded self-belief and inflated ego. Here's the irony. People who pretend to never doubt themselves often come across as insecure. You know the type. They talk over everyone, act defensive when challenged, refuse to admit mistakes. That's not strength. That's fear in disguise. Real confidence is when you can admit, yeah, I don't have all the answers, but still back yourself to figure it out. Think of public speaking, one of the scariest things for most people. The myth says, A confident speaker never feels nervous. But the truth, even seasoned professionals feel butterflies before stepping on stage. The difference is they've learned to reinterpret the nerves as energy, not a signal to run away. They're not immune to doubt. They've just built trust in their ability to perform even while feeling it. And let's zoom out to life in general. If you believed confidence meant never doubting yourself, you'd constantly beat yourself up for being not confident enough. Every time you second-guessed a choice, you'd think, see, I'm weak. But if you reframe it and realize that even confident people doubt themselves, suddenly your inner critic loses some power. Here's a simple way to test it. The next time you feel doubt creeping in, instead of asking, "Why am I doubting myself?" try asking, "What is this doubt trying to protect me from? And what can I do about it?" Maybe the doubt is telling you to prepare better. Maybe it's pointing out a blind spot. Or maybe it's just nerves before doing something new. In any case, confidence is about moving forward, not waiting until doubt disappears. So let's kill this myth once and for all. Confidence does not mean walking around with a superhero shield of certainty 24/7. Confidence means having enough trust in yourself to keep going, even with the little voice of doubt whispering in your ear. In fact, it's the presence of doubt that makes confidence meaningful. If you never doubted, what would there be to be confident about? Networking means collecting as many contacts as possible. When people hear the word networking, most imagine a room full of strangers in suits, everyone clutching business cards, trying to smile wide enough to seem approachable, but not so wide that it looks fake. And the myth goes like this. The more contacts you collect, the more successful you'll be. If you leave an event with 50 business cards, you're winning! Right? Not really. Because here's the truth. Having a stack of names means nothing if none of those people actually know you, trust you, or remember you the next day. Shallow connections don't get you very far. Real opportunities usually come from the people who genuinely like you, respect you, and want to help you, not from strangers who vaguely recall shaking your hand once. Think about it. Have you ever had someone add you on LinkedIn or Instagram and then immediately pitch you their product or service? You don't feel connected to them, you feel sold to. That's the problem with chasing numbers. Collecting contacts without building relationships is like hoarding phone numbers without ever calling anyone. It looks impressive on paper, but doesn't mean much in practice. The people who really win at networking aren't the ones with the biggest Rolodex. They're the ones who focus on depth over breadth. Maybe they only connect with 5 people at an event, but they actually spend time having a real conversation. They listen, ask questions, find common ground. And guess what? Those 5 people are far more likely to remember them than the person who worked the room and handed out cards like free samples. Let's make it practical. Imagine you're looking for a new job. Who's more likely to recommend you? The random person you met once at a seminar? Or the colleague you had coffee with 3 times, swapped stories with, and maybe even helped out on a project? It's obvious the person with whom you built a genuine bond. And here's the funny part. When you stop obsessing over quantity, networking actually becomes less stressful. You don't have to meet everyone. You just need to be curious and authentic with a few people.
You can even admit when you're nervous or new. That kind of honesty often makes you more relatable. There's also a hidden danger in chasing shallow contacts. It can burn you out. You start to see people as numbers instead of humans. Networking turns into a game of how many cards did I get tonight instead of who did I actually connect with. Before long, you'll feel empty, like you're running around collecting tokens in a game that doesn't even matter. The people who thrive are the ones who shift their mindset from collecting to cultivating. They don't just meet people, they follow up. They send a quick note. They check in every once in a while. They don't view networking as transactional. They treat it as relationship building. And over time, that's what creates a circle of people who actually look out for each other. So next time someone tells you networking is all about how many people you know, call that out for what it is, a myth. It's not about how many, it's about how well. One strong connection can open doors that 100 business cards never will.
If it worked for them, it'll work for you. We've all been there. You watch a YouTube video or read a book where some successful person swears they've cracked the code. They wake up at 4:30 a.m., they take cold showers, they journal every day, and boom, they're suddenly millionaires, enlightened, and running marathons before breakfast. And the hidden message is, if you just copy their exact routine, you'll get the same results. Sounds tempting, right? But here's the reality check. Life doesn't work like a copy-paste button. What worked for them might be the absolute worst fit for you. And that's not because you're lazy or broken. It's because personal growth is not one size fits all. Let me ask you this. Have you ever tried to follow someone's routine or habit and it just didn't click? Maybe you tried the 5 a.m. wake-up call, and instead of feeling disciplined, you were a zombie by 2 p.m. Or you tried keto because your friend lost 30 pounds on it, but you ended up cranky and craving bread like it was oxygen. That's not a failure. That's just your body, your mind, and your lifestyle saying, hey, this isn't for me. The myth comes from this sneaky idea that there's a universal blueprint for success. But humans aren't machines. We're ecosystems. We've got different genetics, different upbringings, different stress levels, and different responsibilities. A college kid with no kids and unlimited energy has a completely different reality than a single parent working 2 jobs. Yet self-help gurus often preach the exact same system for everyone, as if those differences don't exist. And here's the kicker. When the system doesn't work for you, instead of questioning the system, most people start blaming themselves. Maybe I didn't try hard enough. Maybe I'm just not cut out for success. That's the part that makes this myth so damaging. It doesn't just waste your time, it erodes your self-esteem. What really works is experimenting. Instead of copying someone else's formula, you borrow pieces of it, test them out, and see what sticks. For example, maybe waking up at 5 a.m. is a no-go, but carving out 30 minutes of quiet time at 9 p.m. works perfectly for your life. Maybe gratitude journaling feels cheesy to you, but voice memos or quick reflections during your commute feel natural. Growth is about customization, not imitation. It's kind of like clothes shopping. Just because a certain outfit looks great on your friend doesn't mean it'll fit your body type or your style. You wouldn't force yourself into shoes 2 sizes too small just because they worked for someone else.
Yet in self-help, people do this all the time. They squeeze themselves into someone else's method, ignoring the blisters. Here's the good news. Once you stop chasing the one-size-fits-all path, you actually free yourself. You stop comparing your journey to everyone else's and start asking the more important question, what works for me? That's when growth becomes sustainable, because it's built around your real life, not somebody else's highlight reel. So the next time someone says, "This is the method that changed my life, you have to try it," remember, you're not them. Their success is their story. Yours will be written in a completely different ink.
Gratitude lists cure unhappiness. Okay, let's be real. We've all heard this one before. Just write down 3 things you're grateful for every day, and all your problems will disappear. It sounds nice, right? Like a magical shortcut to happiness. You're stressed at work? Be grateful you have a job. You're feeling lonely? Be grateful for the sunshine. You're broke? Well, at least you have running water. Now, don't get me wrong. Gratitude is powerful. It can absolutely shift your perspective, and it's a good practice for noticing small positives instead of constantly doom-scrolling your own life. But here's where the myth comes in. Gratitude lists aren't some magical cure-all. They don't erase trauma, systemic inequality, toxic relationships, or the very real struggles that many people face daily. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone working free jobs just to keep the lights on. They're exhausted, underpaid, and barely getting by. Someone tells them, "Hey, just write in your gratitude journal. Be thankful you have food and shelter." Sure, maybe that gives them a 5-second mood boost, but guess what? It doesn't change the fact that the rent is due, their boss is underpaying them, and they can't afford health care. Gratitude doesn't pay bills. Gratitude doesn't fix broken systems. And that's where toxic positivity sneaks in. When people preach gratitude lists as a cure, what they're really doing is bypassing reality. It's basically saying, don't look at the real problem. Just be grateful instead. That can feel invalidating, even guilt-inducing. Like if you're unhappy despite having a gratitude practice, you start thinking, wow, I must be ungrateful or broken because it's not working for me. See how damaging that can be? Here's the thing. Gratitude is a tool, not a cure. It's like putting a bandage on a paper cut. It helps, but it's not going to heal a broken bone. Gratitude works best when it's paired with action. For example, if you're unhappy at work, being grateful for your paycheck might keep you from spiraling into negativity, but it doesn't replace the need to look for better opportunities, set boundaries, or push for fair treatment. And let's not forget that unhappiness isn't always about perspective. It can also be about brain chemistry, trauma, or external conditions. For someone dealing with depression, writing down "I'm grateful for my bed" might feel hollow, almost insulting. That doesn't mean gratitude is useless. It just means it can't be the only strategy. So instead of treating gratitude lists as some kind of magical spell, it helps to see them as one piece of a larger toolkit. Gratitude can balance out your brain's natural negativity bias. It's true, our brains are wired to notice danger and problems more than positives, but it works best alongside other practices: therapy, community support, self-care, and yes, even activism to change the conditions that create misery in the first place. I'll put it this way. Gratitude is like seasoning in a meal. It enhances what's already there, but it can't cover up rotten ingredients. If your life is full of toxic stress, abuse, or unfair circumstances, writing "I'm grateful for my cat" isn't going to magically make those disappear.
And honestly, pretending it will just make people feel like failures when the unhappiness doesn't lift. Here's the healthy approach. Practice gratitude, sure, but don't use it as a way to gaslight yourself into ignoring real struggles. It's perfectly okay to say, I'm grateful for what I have, and I still want things to change. Both can exist at the same time. Gratitude doesn't mean settling. It just means acknowledging the good without denying the bad. So yeah, keep your gratitude list if it helps you. Write down the little wins, the smiles from strangers, the fact that coffee exists. Seriously, that one deserves a spot every time. But don't let anyone tell you that gratitude alone is the ultimate cure for unhappiness, because unhappiness isn't always about being ungrateful. Sometimes it's about being human in a very complicated world.
Quitting means failure. We've all been told since childhood, never quit. It's drilled into us through motivational posters, movies, sports coaches yelling at us to push through pain, and self-help books that glorify hustle until you make it. The message is loud and clear. Quitting equals weakness, failure, or a lack of character. But here's the thing. Sometimes quitting is not only okay, it's the smartest, healthiest, and most strategic decision you can make. Let's unpack this, because the never quit mantra might actually be making a lot of people miserable. Think about it. Life isn't a straight track race where perseverance always wins. Sometimes you're running the wrong race entirely. Imagine grinding away at a job you hate, where your boss treats you like dirt, the pay doesn't cover your bills, and you wake up every morning with a knot in your stomach. But you tell yourself, I can't quit, because quitting means I failed. So you stay. You push through, and slowly your health, your relationships, and your joy start to crumble. Now ask yourself, is that strength, or is that self-destruction disguised as perseverance? There's a powerful difference between giving up too soon and recognizing a dead end. Quitting can actually be an act of courage, choosing to walk away from something that's draining your life force and redirecting your energy towards something that actually fits your values and goals. Think about athletes, for example. Sometimes they retire not because they can't physically continue, but because their body and mind are telling them, if you keep pushing, you're going to break. That's not failure, that's wisdom. Or entrepreneurs who pour years into a startup that's clearly not working. Instead of burning out and going bankrupt, they pivot or shut it down. That's not quitting in the loser sense. It's adjusting strategy. Here's the psychological trap. We glorify sunk costs. The longer we've been in something, whether it's a career, a degree, or a relationship, the harder it is to leave. We think, I've already invested so much, I can't just walk away. But sometimes walking away is exactly what protects your future. Because sunk costs are gone no matter what. You can't get them back. The only question is whether you're going to keep investing in something that doesn't serve you or free yourself up for a better opportunity. Here's a little reframe. Quitting doesn't mean you failed. It means you gathered information, tested a path, and realized it wasn't right for you. That's wisdom, not weakness. In fact, some of the most successful people in the world are great quitters. They try things,
They experiment, and when something clearly doesn't fit, they let it go. That's how innovation happens, not by clinging to the wrong thing out of pride, but by constantly course-correcting. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying give up the moment things get hard. Perseverance matters. Sometimes you need to push through discomfort, boredom, or the beginner stage to reach something meaningful. But there's a huge difference between short-term struggle on the way to growth and long-term suffering in something that's fundamentally misaligned with who you are. The self-help myth of never quit paints quitting as a scarlet letter, when in reality, quitting is often an essential skill. It takes self-awareness to say, this relationship isn't healthy for me. It takes courage to admit this career path isn't what I thought it would be. It takes wisdom to say, I'm walking away, not because I'm weak, but because I value my future too much to waste it here. Here's a question to ask yourself. If you quit this thing you're stuck in, would it free up energy for something that actually matters to you? Would it give you back your time, your health, your joy? If the answer is yes, then that's not failure. That's success in disguise. So let's flip the script. Quitting isn't always the end of the story. Sometimes it's the beginning of a better one.
Time management hacks equal productivity. Okay, let's talk about one of the biggest lies the self-help world has sold us. That time management is the holy grail of productivity. If you just use the right planner, the right app, or the right block schedule, suddenly you'll be unstoppable. You'll have more hours in your day, you'll crush your to-do list, and you'll finally feel in control of your life. Sounds amazing, right? The problem is, it's not true. Because here's the reality. You don't actually need more hours in your day. You already have 24, just like everyone else. The real issue isn't the number of hours. It's how much energy, focus, and mental clarity you have during those hours. You can plan your day down to the minute, but if you're exhausted, distracted, and mentally checked out, no calendar system in the world is going to save you. Let me give you an example. Imagine two people. One wakes up, has had a good night's sleep, feels rested, and has a clear sense of what matters most for the day. They work for 2 solid hours on their most important task and get it done. That's productivity. Now, imagine another person who stayed up late, woke up groggy, spent an hour tweaking a planner, color-coding their to-do list, and then sat at their desk trying to power through. They technically managed their time, but their brain wasn't on board. They didn't have energy. They didn't have focus. And what happens? They burn hours doing busy work and end the day wondering, where did the time go? That's the difference. Time management hacks look shiny, but they often distract from the real core, managing your energy and focus. Think about it like this. Your brain is not a machine that works at 100% capacity from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. It has peaks and valleys. Some people are sharpest in the morning, others late at night. If you don't respect those rhythms and try to hack your time into rigid boxes, you're just fighting your biology. That's why some people love waking up at 5 a.m. to win the day, and others crash and burn after a week. It's not about the time,
It's about when you naturally have energy and how you use it. Another piece people ignore: attention. We live in a world designed to steal it. Phones buzzing, emails pinging, social media scrolling. You can have the most perfectly organized Google Calendar, but if you're checking Instagram every 10 minutes, your productivity is gone. Productivity isn't measured by how full your schedule is. It's measured by how deeply you can focus on what matters most. And here's the irony: a lot of time management hacks actually make things worse. People spend hours optimizing systems, tweaking productivity apps, trying new morning routines every week. But all that effort becomes another form of procrastination. It feels like work, but it's not real work. You're managing the illusion of productivity instead of doing the thing that matters. So what's the shift? Stop obsessing over time management and start focusing on energy management. Ask yourself, when do I feel most alert? Protect that time for your hardest, most important tasks. What drains me the fastest? Limit it or schedule recovery afterward. Am I giving myself enough rest, nutrition, and movement to actually sustain focus? That last point is huge. No planner is going to fix brain fog caused by 3 hours of sleep and 5 cups of coffee. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do is close the laptop, take a nap, or go for a walk. Because when you come back, you'll get more done in 30 minutes of clear focus than in 3 hours of tired grinding. Here's a truth bomb. Productivity isn't about cramming more into your day. It's about having the energy and clarity to do less better. Time hacks treat you like a robot. Energy and focus management treat you like a human. And the last time I checked, you're not a robot. So next time you see some guru selling a perfect daily schedule, remember, time is fixed. Energy is flexible. If you can manage your energy, protect your focus, and align your tasks with your natural rhythms, you'll get more done in less time without burning out. That's real productivity.
You can reprogram your subconscious overnight. All right, let's tackle one of the biggest self-help myths out there. The idea that you can completely reprogram your subconscious mind in one night. You've probably seen the promises: listen to this audio while you sleep, repeat this mantra 3 times, or do this one magical technique and boom, by tomorrow morning your brain will be rewired, your habits will be fixed, and your life will be transformed. Sounds like a dream, right? Literally. But here's the thing. It's just not how the human brain works. Your subconscious is basically the part of your mind that runs on autopilot. It's where your beliefs, habits, and emotional patterns live. The stuff you don't even think about, it just happens. Like brushing your teeth, checking your phone without realizing it, or flinching when someone throws a ball at you. Those patterns didn't form overnight. They were built over months, years, even decades of repetition. So here's the catch. If it took that long to create those patterns, why would we think they can be erased and replaced in 8 hours of sleep? It's like going to the gym once and expecting 6-pack abs by morning. Nice idea, but biology doesn't play that game. Now, don't get me wrong. There are definitely ways to influence your subconscious. Affirmations, visualization, journaling, therapy, these things really can reshape the way your mind operates, but they work because of consistency. It's the daily repetition, The small, steady reinforcement that eventually shifts your automatic patterns. Think about when you first learned how to drive. At first, it was overwhelming. Check the mirrors, watch the speed, keep the wheel steady, signal properly. Your conscious brain had to handle everything. But after weeks and months of practice, it became automatic. You don't think, now I will turn the wheel exactly 30 degrees to the left. You just do it. That's your subconscious kicking in. And it didn't get there in a single night. It got there through practice and repetition. The same is true for rewiring unhelpful patterns. If you've spent years telling yourself, I'm not good enough, or I always mess things up, you can't just say one positive sentence before bed and wake up free of self-doubt. Your subconscious will still default to the familiar pattern until it's exposed to enough new consistent input to believe otherwise. Here's a little science behind it. The brain has something called neuroplasticity, which is basically its ability to rewire itself. New thoughts and habits create new neural pathways. But here's the key. Those pathways only become strong through repetition. One-time efforts create weak connections that fade away. Repeated practice builds the muscle memory of your brain. And here's where the overnight promise becomes dangerous. It sets people up for failure. If someone truly believes they can erase deep-seated habits in one night, they'll be crushed when they wake up the next morning feeling exactly the same. And that disappointment can make them think they're broken, when in reality, the process just takes longer than the marketing made it sound. So what actually works? Small, consistent rewiring. Instead of trying to flip a subconscious switch, think of it like teaching your brain a new language. You don't learn Spanish in one night, but if you practice a little every day, flashcards, conversations, or listening, you slowly start thinking in Spanish. That's exactly how your subconscious learns. Let me give you a simple example. Say you want to reprogram your subconscious belief around money, because deep down you think, I'll never be financially stable. Instead of expecting one sleep track to erase that belief, you do things like expose yourself to stories and examples of people who built stability, repeat affirmations daily while actually taking small money-related actions, track your progress to prove to your brain that change is happening, celebrate small wins so your subconscious starts to associate money with safety and success. Do that for weeks or months, and your automatic thoughts about money start to shift. That's real reprogramming. Here's the bottom line. Your subconscious isn't a computer you can just download a new file into. It's more like a garden. You plant seeds, water them daily, and eventually they grow into something strong. But if you plant a seed tonight and expect a full-grown tree tomorrow, you're going to be disappointed. So, next time you see someone claiming you can rewire your subconscious overnight, take it with a big salt of grain. Real change is possible, absolutely. But it's built on patience, repetition, and consistency. And honestly, that's a good thing. Because when you do put in the work, the changes don't just disappear overnight either. They stick. They become part of you. That's how you actually reprogram your subconscious, not in a night, but over time.